Hello, and welcome to Books and Crannies,
a book lovers podcast.
I'm Danielle.
And I am Sarah.
And this is episode 5, y'all.
Episode 5.
Episode number 5.
Oh my goodness.
We're turning it into a musical, obviously.
We've been singing a lot today.
We have. So maybe we just need to also sing on the podcast.
No.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Nobody wants that. This episode, y'all, is a little bit of a change of pace because if you've listened, you know that we were knee-deep in the world of ACOTAR. We read the first, and we got halfway through. Well, maybe a little more than halfway through. ACOMAF, but we're taking a break. We left you on a freaking cliffhanger.
Haha.
Suckers. I'm not trying to be mean.
No. But maybe a little.
But maybe like kind of.
Just a little.
But you'll get over it.
Gentle bullying never hurt anyone.
We're going to get backlash for that. But we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about The Midnight Library.
By Matt Haig.
Yeah.
And this is an entirely different genre.
Very, very,
very different.
Sharp turn.
And a very different experience reading it.
Yeah.
And just, you know, the whole vibe.
Yeah.
It's completely different. So buckle up.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. If you haven't read it, you should probably do that and then come back.
Yeah. Don't listen to this unless you have read it.
Right.
Or don't want to.
If you
you just want someone to tell you about it.
Tell you about it in just not good.
Yeah, no. In absolute chaos.
In a way that makes little sense. Maybe, I mean, we're pretty good.
It makes a little sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before we get started, we do want to throw out a trigger warning, just a disclaimer. This book touches on unaliving yourself and starts from the very beginning. The very beginning. The main character decides she doesn't want to live anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so shall we dive in? It's already going to be weird.
Once again, great podcasting day.
Every day is a great podcasting day here.
Absolutely.
Obviously.
Grab a drink and your favorite snack.
Yes.
And let's
cozy.
get started.
Or if you're driving, pay attention on the road.
Yeah. You could still have a snack.
You could. Just like one hand on the wheel. Okay, please. Don't be like munching a burger or something. Or you could. I don't know your life. Anyways.
Let's get started, y'all.
Yes. So, The Midnight Library. We start in a library. Very fitting.
Yeah.
There's a small prologue. And it starts saying 19 years before Nora decided to unalive herself. Is that right?
No, it's 19 years before she decided to die.
Okay.
I don't know if we can say die.
I mean, I think so. Okay. I think it depends on the platform more than the... Yeah, anyway, doesn't matter. So that's what it starts you off with. So you kind of already have this, like, ominous sense from the very get.
Yeah.
They're like, so just know that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
In 19 years. But she's talking to Mrs. Elm.
Did we say her name?
Nora.
Nora is the main character.
Nora is the main character. She's the one we're going to be talking about mainly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's her journey.
Yep.
You know? But she's talking to Mrs. Elm, who's like her school librarian. Yeah.
I was going to say library teacher.
School library teacher. And today, class, we're looking at books. Organizing. Dewey Decimal System.
Oh my God.
I think we learned about that at one point in school.
Yeah.
Nonetheless. She's a librarian. But they're talking about... Mrs. Elm is essentially telling Nora that she can, like, be whatever she wants to be.
Yeah.
Like, don't get stuck in one idea. You could do anything, including be a glaciologist.
Yes. They talk a lot about glaciologists.
Glaciologists. That word feels wrong to me.
What, glaciologist?
Yeah, is that how you say it?
I think so.
I don't know if that's true. I'm just kidding. It probably is, but it sounds weird. Nonetheless, they're going over options, and then Mrs. Elm gets a phone call.
Yep. And we don't really learn what this phone call was until later, but her face falls and she's like, yeah, she's here. Mm-hmm.
She being Nora.
Obviously. They're the only two there.
And that's where the prologue ends and you start heading into
19 years
later. And Nora is going through it, y'all.
She is. And this is 27 hours before she decided to die.
Yeah. So we're getting down to the wire.
Yeah.
It just jumps from 19 years ago to the day of.
Well, 27 hours is not the day of.
Sorry, a day
the
and
day
few
before.
Hours. Okay, geez. Nonetheless, it drops you right in. The countdown's on. And Nora is just having a bad time.
She is.
She's having a really bad time. Stuff just starts going wrong left and right.
Yeah. First thing being, she gets a knock on her door, and there's a man who tells her cat is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Died.
Yeah.
Dead. Her cat is not just gone. It's gone.
I was trying to avoid the D word.
I'm sorry.
And you said multiple variations of it.
Trying to keep you on your toes. Keep myself on my toes.
Died dead.
Died all the way dead. I'll stop. Sorry. But her cat is on the side of the road, lifeless.
Yep.
And Ash is a surgeon that she met at some point.
When her mom was in surgery, and he was nice to her. Mm-hmm. But then didn't he, like, come into her work and buy something?
Yeah.
And he asked her for coffee?
Yeah. And she didn't take him up on it because she was engaged at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's the one who comes to the door and helps her go bury her cat.
Yeah. Very sweet.
Yeah. And when they go retrieve said cat, Nora talks about, of course, feeling sad for her cat, but then lets on that she feels envious.
Yeah.
So it's right in theme with her countdown at the beginning of the chapter. And then after she buries her cat, she goes to work. Mm-hmm. She works at the String Theory.
And she's late to work because, she just buried her cat.
Cat situation.
And her boss is kind of a dick.
Yeah. Neil? Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure his name is. Come on, Neil. Relax. Relax.
Be nice.
Well, it may be true that Nora does this a lot. Maybe Neil's like, I'm sick of this nonsense, Nora. Yeah. But anyway, he reprimands her. He's like, dude, what the heck? And she's like, listen, I'm having a hard time. They talk a little bit about her mental health and how she was diagnosed with situational depression. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
Sorry. But I'm here now, Neil.
Yeah.
But then
we also learn that she's been working at this store for 13 years, which
13 years.
A long time.
It's a very long time. She's 35 and has a degree
in philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she could be doing other things, but she sort of stayed stagnant seemingly at the String Theory, selling instruments and such, is what it seems like.
Music related things.
Music items, paraphernalia. We also learned that she teaches piano on the side.
But she only has one student.
Just one.
So she's not like out there making bank on piano lessons.
She's not a full-fledged teach, just like dabbling in it.
Yeah.
And she used to be in a band, so that ties back to all the music nonsense with her brother and his best friend. And
speaking of her brother, Neil tells her that her brother came into the store on her day off. Yeah. And she's like, well, that was intentional. Mm-hmm. Like, he knows my days off.
He avoided me.
Rude.
Yeah, that's really rude, Joe. What's that about?
Poor Nora.
I know. The brother's name's Joe. Robbie's the best friend. They're mentioned. And then we also learned that, like, not long ago, she backed out of a wedding.
Yeah.
2 days before it was supposed to go down.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after her mom died. So we learned a lot about Nora in that conversation with Neil. I almost said Wheel as if that's a name.
I know that's what you want to name your next child.
You know it.
Come
Put
here,
a finger
little
down. Wheelie. I guess they better be really good at wheelies, or else they won't live up to their namesake.
No other option.
None. But then Neil goes ahead and freaking fires her.
Yeah, and he says something about, like, I can't afford to keep you on payroll when your face is always so something. I don't remember what he said, but he just blames her face for firing
your
her.
Face.
I'm like, that's kind of rude. She's been working there for 13 years, and all of a sudden you're going to fire her because of her face?
Her face. Which, if she has situational depression, then I'm sure that's part of it.
Yeah.
But Neil, like, you should have said something prior to the day of the firing.
Yeah.
The reaping, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and he's nice. He says something along the lines of, like, I know that you can do more than this. Like,
he's trying to, like, encourage her to be more than what she's been for 14 years. Is that what you said?
13.
I was close.
13.
I was almost there. Lucky number 13. So she's upset.
Yeah.
Naturally.
And she leaves work.
Yep.
Which is not her work anymore. Sorry, Nora.
Yeah.
And she runs into Robbie, who is Joe's best friend.
Brother Joe's best friend, Robbie, who is resentful, seemingly.
Yeah.
We learned that her ex-fiance's name was Dan, and that the band they were in, the Labyrinths, Robbie, Joe, and Nora, got like a record deal, or were offered one at least, and
they were offered.
Turned it down. And Nora in this conversation with Robbie was like, well, I had Dan, and I told them that they should sign you with or without me.
Yeah.
And he's still upset.
Yeah, he's
obviously
salty.
Yeah.
And another big reason that she left was because she was like dealing with her mental health and having panic attacks all the time. And no one can be understanding of that, which is like,
it's huge.
That's hard in that situation,
I know. Yeah. Yes. And if you've never gone through it yourself, I feel like it's so hard to grasp it. Yeah. Like you hear so much like, oh, you just need to exercise.
Yeah, you need to just get over it.
Smile. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yeah. That's truly helpful. It doesn't at all make it worse.
Yeah.
But she has that interaction with Robbie. She also runs into Carrie Ann, which is like a person from her school.
Yeah, and during the interaction with Robbie, she asks about Joe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he tells her that he did see Joe while he was in town. And
yeah.
Says something along the lines of like...
He seemed depressed.
Yeah, Joe's depressed, and he's like, we could be in Malibu right now, but instead we're here, and it's all your fault.
Yeah.
Because you left the band.
Yeah, yeah. So your future and happiness relies entirely on Miss Nora.
Yeah,
Robbie.
And that's the only reason that Joe won't see you.
Right.
Because he's pissed at you
messed
still.
everything up. Yeah. Which is wild and really rude. Robbie, you should find happiness in and of yourself, my dude. But she runs into Carrie Ann also. It's somebody from school. And they talk a little bit about like Carrie Ann and her husband having had kids. And that's a brief interaction, but Carrie Ann does resurface eventually.
Yeah.
But then after all of that, she tries to text her best friend, or former best friend, I guess.
Yeah.
They aren't
close anymore.
Currently best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. With no response.
Yeah.
Izzy
and
is
that was
the name.
Like, Nora said, like, that's her last hope for someone to, like, comfort her in this moment when she's just having a bad time.
I know. I mean, she got burned by her cat, obviously. Her boss burned her.
Yeah.
Robbie's out here throwing resentment left and right.
Yeah.
Not at all understanding her situation.
Her brother won't talk to her.
Her brother won't talk to her. So everyone's leaving her hanging, and she was hoping that maybe Izzy would, respond at least.
Yeah.
I do wonder, though, if, like, in her text to Izzy, if she'd been more like, hey, I need you.
Yeah.
I think it was just like a, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. I don't know. But, like, she should speak up about her needs, too, in some way.
Yeah. Totally.
But that's hard. I don't know. Maybe if she was a little more pushy, Izzy might have been like, oh, snap, girl, you good?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. But then she is left unread by Izzy, and she has a degree in philosophy, and throughout the book, she my goodness, she quotes Thoreau a number of times.
Yeah.
And in this interaction after Izzy, she quoted him in saying, go confidently in the direction of your dreams, live life you've imagined. And she doesn't feel like she knows what that is. Mm-hmm. Like, she doesn't feel like she has a reason to exist anymore. Things keep dropping.
Yeah.
And then come to find more will slip out of under her. But she quotes him in, like, is obviously having these dark thoughts and sort of existential dread about, like, why am I even here? Mm-hmm. My existence doesn't have much of an impact.
Yeah.
Which is only exasperated.
Yeah, she gets a phone call from the one student that she has. His mother calls and is like, you're an hour late for the lesson and we're waiting for you.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, I think she says they're an hour late and, like, essentially alludes to the fact that they're going to drop his lessons. Like, they're not going to do them anymore.
Nora's like, I'm sorry, I'm almost there. And she's like, don't bother. He's thinking about quitting anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's losing that.
Yeah.
And then her elderly neighbor, Mr. Bangery, I think is his name, which that's a hell of a name. And I like that for you, old guy. But she had been helping him, like, pick up prescriptions and stuff, and he also, like, brushes her off. Like, I have somebody else to do it for me. I don't need you to do that anymore. So literally any ties or responsibility that she had have been ripped out from under her in one day.
Yeah. Those, like, the things that were giving her a reason to live. And even if there were just little things, you know.
Yeah.
Any little thing to hold on to is...
when you're feeling like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was all of them, like, you know, take or leave
all at
one.
once. Yeah.
Right. Everything just hit the fan all at one time.
Yeah. It's terrible.
So naturally, she's not feeling so great. And ends up going into her apartment and decides that she wants to unalive herself. I think in this last ditch effort, she does call her brother and he doesn't answer. So she leaves him a voicemail. And she writes a note. I don't know if we want to read the note.
I'm going to read the voicemail that she left her brother.
Okay. I can pull the note up as well.
So her voicemail to her brother said, "I love you, Joe. I just wanted you to know that. There's nothing you could have done. This is about me. Thank you for being my brother. I love you. Bye."
Yep.
That's sad. Can you imagine getting a voicemail like that?
I know. I mean, it would cause panic. It's just like cryptic wording. It's kind of clear her intention.
Yeah,
you know what
absolutely.
I mean? And so there's nothing left to interpretation in that.
Yeah.
And then she does leave a letter or a note. This is on page 23. She said, "Dear whoever, I had all the chances to make something of my life, and I blew every one of them. Through my own carelessness and misfortune, the world has retreated from me, and so now it makes perfect sense that I should retreat from the world. If I felt it was possible to stay, I would, but I don't, and so I can't. I make life worse for people. I have nothing to give. I'm sorry. Be kind to each other." It's very sad.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel like her existence offers anything to the world anymore.
Yeah.
And so she takes the plunge. And instead of, you know, drifting off to nothing.
Or whatever.
Who knows what happens. And maybe this does.
Maybe.
She heads to a sort of in-between.
Yeah.
She, like, kind of comes to consciousness, but it's clearly not in her apartment.
Yeah, no. It's like foggy, and she's outside of a like big grand building.
Like crazy columns, and it looks very ornate. And she's like, what the dang heck?
It's like a cathedral.
A cathedral. That would be intimidating. It's like, are you the gates of heaven?
Yeah.
Or like, what is this? What is this? But she then goes inside, and it's a library.
It is.
And she's about to, like, pull a book off a shelf and gets warned to be careful by some voice behind her.
Well, and the whole building is very ominous. Like, walking in, she says that, like, she takes a step, and when she turns around, the door is gone, and all of the windows that she saw outside are not inside.
Yeah.
And it's just like an endless labyrinth of bookshelves.
Yeah. So all points of entry are gone. You're now trapped in this weird, dark,
Spoopy,
mysterious corridors of books. Which, books, though?
I mean, yeah. But then someone's telling you can't touch them. No, thank you. Is this hell?
Be careful. Right. Hell is being trapped in a library that you cannot touch any of the books in. It could be worse, I suppose.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But that's not cool. And then we come to find that the voice who told her to be careful is Mrs. Elm. Or at least some portrayal of her.
Yeah.
And we find out that she was the one who told her that her father had died. Yeah. That was that whole phone call.
That was the phone call.
Phone call in the prologue.
And she, stayed with her and held her while she waited for her mom.
Yeah. And her mom
took an hour.
An hour. Which is insane to me.
Yeah.
Because...
wouldn't you want to get to your kid immediately?
Right. You'd think that they'd want to be with family, or the mom would want to be
with family. Or, the mom would want to be the one to tell her that her father is dead.
Not just, who called Mrs. Elm? Yeah. Was it the mom? And you're asking the librarian to pass on this life-changing news, and then you don't show up for an hour? That's wild.
It's
I mean,
insane.
it paints a picture of, like, the relationship that she has with her mom. Clearly, it's very healthy.
Yeah.
And even when Nora's mom does come get her, the mom is like, is she inconsolable?
No, she's, like, completely detached. Like,
She, like, ignores
the whole
Nora.
car ride, Nora's telling her mom that she loves her, and her mom just doesn't even say a word to her.
Yeah. She says
And Joe's
nothing.
in the back seat just, like, I don't know what he's doing, but...
Numb, it seemed. I feel
Yeah.
like I remember him
Yeah.
just sort of shut off. So that's great, and it definitely paints a picture of that relationship. And then she asks Mrs. Elm if she's dead, if this is some sort of afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Elm says, you know, it's an in-between.
Yeah.
It's a little column A, little column B. And each book in here, it represents or is a possible life that you could have or could still live.
Which you just undid one little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like when I read a book, I'm living different lives.
Same.
So that's an interesting concept. And I love that it's presented for Nora in that way, like a library of just books to scan through.
And it's endless.
And it's endless.
Endless possibilities.
Endless possibilities. Infinite.
Mm-hmm. Infinite.
There's an extra T there. Sorry, I tapped my mic. Don't get mad at me.
I'm pissed.
So there are as many lives or books, they're one and the same, as there are possibilities. And then all of the books, all of these possible lives are starting now being midnight on the dot. They're all starting at the same time. So it's not like she would go to a new life and have started over. Like she wouldn't be 10 years ago or whatever.
No.
She would be hopping into somebody's life.
That exact moment.
Hopping into, I guess, her own life, but led by a different version of Nora.
Yeah.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
When in this moment, like when Mrs. Elm is telling her about the library and what it's all about, Nora's like, man, I can't even do anything right. I can't even become unalived correctly. Like, she's just...
can't even do that. Even that failed me.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's going through it.
She's
like, man,
through it.
My failures led to just another failure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it feels like she's stuck now in this space, which is still a sort of sense of existence. You know what I mean? Like, she's still aware.
She's still conscious.
Yeah. So it's like defeated the purpose.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Elm goes on to bring out the Book of Regrets. Mm-hmm. How would you feel about being presented with a book of your regrets?
I feel like that thing would be massive.
I think everybody's would, right? I mean, it's described to, like, hold every single big or small regret you've ever had since birth.
Yeah.
And I think about that, and I'm like, what regrets does a baby have?
I mean, I don't know.
Were there any in that section or that chapter? It's like,
don't know.
damn, I regretted not pooping in my diaper instead of
I really regret blowing out on my auntie that one time and getting poop in my hair.
My child. Yeah, I don't know, but it's from the dawn of time.
Yeah.
The dawn of Nora time.
She does say, though, that it's not, like, a chronological book.
Yeah.
Like, the regrets are listed in order of, I don't know, importance, I guess. Like, the tiniest regrets are at the beginning, and it gets bigger and bigger from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember something along those lines.
Yeah.
So then if you flip to the back page, you're just immediately hit with all of your
Like,
most effective regret. Effective? Terrible?
Sure.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. But the biggest regrets that affect your life the most, so I guess that was sort of correct. But anyway, Mrs. Elm's like, go ahead, scan through. Take a peek at all of the things you have regretted in your life. And she essentially is pushing Nora to, like, pick a regret that she wants to undo.
Yeah.
And when Nora does flip through, it's, like, overwhelming.
Yeah.
It starts sucking the life out of her, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's how it's portrayed.
She's, like, losing strength and...
Yeah. It's a Dementor.
Yes. Exactly like that.
That's what Dementors are. Regrets.
Dementors are actually books. I love them.
Yes, I actually do. But that's an entirely different book. Yeah, so Mrs. Elm has to, like, get Nora's attention and pull her away from the book. But Nora has to be the one to close it.
Yeah, Mrs. Elm cannot close the book for her.
Right.
Which,
That's,
I guess...
what's the rules there? Why?
I'm sure it's because, like, I don't know, she has to, like, take power over it in some capacity.
Yeah, sort of own them.
Like, no one else can undo your regrets for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that has anything to do with
maybe
it.
a new regret is opening that book.
Maybe.
I
really regretting all of these things.
And looking at them. Fair. I don't think I want to look at them either.
No.
I mean, I have nights where I like something that happened 10 years ago comes in my head. I'm like, wow, that was really not cool of me.
Yeah.
And then feel overwhelming regret.
Yeah. And do you ever think about, like, man, what if I hadn't done that? Like, what would be different about this moment right now if I hadn't done that?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think about that. This book is right up my alley, y'all. I didn't preface with that. But, like, these are the kind of conversations I love having. Like, existence. The possibility of multiple lives that are sort of sprouted off every decision you could ever make, which kind of messes me up because I'm like, every small decision even could be a big decision.
Absolutely.
In the long run. Like,
what if that ant I killed yesterday could have saved the world?
My mind went to, like, Aunt Teresa. I was like, Sarah, you should not be admitting that on a podcast.
What if that bug I killed yesterday?
That's probably better. But yeah.
Could have cured cancer.
That bug.
You never know.
Is a genius. Was a genius, Sarah. You ended scientific research done by an ant.
I ended the Einstein of bugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never know.
But maybe it would have only been like ant cancer, so it wouldn't have applied to us anyway. Anyways. Yeah. So she closes the Book of Regrets. We got off on a side tangent. So I kind of forgot what was happening. She closes
the book.
And Mrs. Helm is like, what's the first one that you want to focus on?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's the first one you want to undo? And she
decides that she wants to not break up with Dan.
Right. Dan being ex-fiancé.
Ex-fiancé.
And so Mrs. Elm, the shelves start like freaking sliding by all quick and being crazy. And Mrs. Elm seems to have power over them. And she's like, summons a book to her.
And the way I pictured this was like a floating book. Like she has Levitation.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Yeah. Levitating books flying everywhere.
Everywhere. All over the place. She brings one to Nora's like, open up. Mm-hmm. Read the first page. And then Nora's gone.
Yep.
And by gone, I mean she's now in a different Nora's body.
Yeah, she just like appears outside of a pub.
Dude, how messed up would that be? Because again, you're not starting at the beginning of a life.
I know.
You're starting in the middle of one. And I know you had a question about this.
I did, yeah. I'm like, okay, so what happens to the consciousness that's like living that life when she comes? Like, where do they go?
Yeah. Where does secondary Nora head off into? But then is it all her?
But how?
I mean, if it
can't be, because there is a point. I mean, yes, it's her, but there's a point later in the book where she is like about to leave a life, and she says that she can feel the other Nora like standing back, ready to take her place when she leaves.
But is it like? I mean, yeah. But then I'm like, is it, the memories of that part of Nora returning rather than like a whole new entity? I don't know. I don't know either. Plot questions.
It really bothered me this entire book. Every single time she jumped into a new life, I was like, but what?
Yeah.
About the other one?
Yeah, there's no explanation either. It never really tells you what the deal is there. What the diddly bop. Because even if, also Mrs. Elm's whole thing is like, if you find a life that you aren't thoroughly disappointed by and want to lead, then you can like stay in that life.
Yeah, you'll stay there forever, and eventually you'll start remembering things, and you'll forget about the library eventually.
You're just gonna like steal someone else's life.
Where is that person gonna go?
Yeah. What are they gonna do? Do they go to a different in-between? An in-between? Between.
And in between the in-between.
I don't know.
I
Great
don't know
question.
either.
They never answer it either. What do
bothers
y'all
me.
think?
It really bothers me.
And nonetheless, she shows up. She's in England,
Outside of a pub.
in Oxfordshire, y'all.
Orc.
I'm starting off really strong. Really strong.
It's fine.
In front of an inn, or a pub, I should say, which was always Dan's dream. Dan wanted to own a pub in this exact location.
Yep.
And make it big. And so when she pulls up outside of it, she's like, oh, wow, we accomplished said dream, and is really hoping that in this life she has happiness. She passes by people that seem to know her, and she has no idea who they are, obviously.
And she does a really good job at pretending.
Yeah, she kind of,
like, yeah,
she
totally
BS's
see
her
ya.
way through. Yeah, totally. I feel like that's enough. If they asked her anything personal, though, like,
I know.
I have to poop.
Gotta go.
Anything to get out of that conversation. And then eventually she stumbles upon Dan.
Yeah. He's in the pub. He's got a drink in his hand.
He's drunk.
He's drunk.
He's already drunk.
And the first thing she says to him is like, hey, I'm proud of us.
I'm proud of us. You know, we accomplished our dream. And he's like, huh?
He's like, what? Okay, well, I was just cleaning out this line.
Yeah, whatever.
And she's like,
freaking
oh,
Nora.
yeah, totally.
I don't have time for you.
All right.
I mean, that is kind of an off-the-wall thing to say out of nowhere, especially if that life Nora could give two shits.
Very true. Well, and we learned that they're, like, having financial troubles.
They're having financial troubles.
So he's like, what? Shut up.
Yeah. They're having relationship issues.
Yeah.
She talks to him sort of briefly. He's kind of condescending. He's like, laughs at her.
Like, yeah, at her expense.
At her expense.
He asks her a question about, like, in the pub that night they had, like, trivia or something, and he asks her one of the questions, and she knows the answer, and he laughs at her. Like,
yeah.
Of course you would know that.
Okay, Dan.
Ugh,
Relax, Dan. Just because you don't know the answer, you fool.
You fool.
Freaking jerk. But yeah, he seems like kind of a shit person. And Nora's not feeling it. She kind of starts talking about how she's having trouble remembering him as he was. And has a quote from Thomas Hobbes that says, imagination and memory are the same thing, which I wrote down because I was like, that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, that brings into my mind the conversation around, like, are your deja vu moments that feel like memories or dreams, are they just, like, from another Danielle or another Sarah? Yeah. Sending messages down your soul bond.
Yeah.
Because you're all the same, but different.
Yeah. It's
I don't know.
Trippy.
I know. And then people, they say that in your dreams, all the faces that come to your mind are people you've seen before. And I'm like, is that only in this plane?
Oh.
Or is it like people you've seen in other lives?
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Like me somewhere could live in Australia.
Right.
And I'm dreaming about the faces I see.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe the people in your dreams are like your husband or your sister or whoever in a different life.
Yeah.
Yep. So that got me thinking. But
that's weird.
I know, right? Memory and imagination are basically the same.
Yeah.
That trips me out. Now I'm going to think about a dream and be like, oh no, what's happening to other Danielle?
Am I dead?
Is everything okay?
Anyways, her and Dan are talking, and he mentions a woman named Erin who he saw Nora talking to earlier.
Yeah.
And asks how the conversation went, and she was like, "Oh yeah, it was really good." And he was like, "Really?"
Yeah. Which, why are you shocked
why are you
by
acting
that?
weird, dude?
We find out a little bit about the band situation and how essentially Dan, like, completely tore that plan down.
Yeah.
Didn't care about her dreams at all, was only focused on his.
Yeah, she has a memory about, like, the label that wanted to sign them and how she was going to write into the contract that he could travel with her everywhere and they were going to see the world together, and he told her, that's your dream, it's not mine. Which is messed up because she made the pub her dream as well because it was his dream.
I know.
And he couldn't do the same
As
for
if
her.
the pub was hers to start, Dan.
Come on.
You could have supported both ways. Maybe if she had, made it big in a band, you'd be able to afford a freaking pub without financial insecurity.
Yeah.
Rude.
We also forgot to mention that this life Nora has a cat.
Oh, yeah.
With the same name as her cat, but it's a different cat, obviously.
Yeah, it's a different cat with the same name. Voltaire. Volts.
Voltsy.
But it's a different cat. She's like, you're an imposter.
Yeah.
You are not my Volts, sir.
She calls him Volts number 2, though.
Volts number 2. He got demoted. And she's just continually getting the ick from Dan in the way that he's talking to her.
Same.
Yeah, same. He sounds like a prick.
Yeah.
And he's drunk, and he doesn't have any sort of, like, emotional intelligence. And he's just sort of being rude and condescending.
It took about 0.2 seconds for me to hate him.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Same. I mean, even in her root life, like, before she entered the Midnight Library, he had texted her drunk or something and was like, I miss you.
Yeah.
So he's a real character.
Yeah.
But we then find out that Erin, the lady that he had brought up before, is someone he had an affair with in this life.
Yeah.
The pub life.
Yeah.
Multiple times. And tries to play it off like, well, I was drunk. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah, and we were having issues with the pub, and I was so stressed. I'm like, okay, so you're blaming your dream that Nora helped make come true.
Yeah.
As you're using that as an excuse to cheat on her?
To cheat on her.
That's messed up.
To wreck your marriage. I know. They have financial issues, which we talked about, but he's just like pretentious. He's drunk. He's arrogant. And
we also learned that they had a little like tiff over Ash asking her for coffee.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he like overreacted about that
and she
situation.
Never
she
even
didn't do anything.
Yeah, she didn't entertain it at all.
No,
she just told him as like a funny. This happened to me.
Yeah,
I feel like if I told my husband that, he wouldn't be like, scandal.
I can't believe you,
you cheater. And she starts to realize there's this quote on page 58 where she says she had shrunk for him, but he still hadn't found the space he needed. So she kept putting herself into this small box to make room for him, and seemingly he still needed more and more and more
he was
than
still
she could give.
Asking for more.
Yeah, she gave him everything seemingly that he wanted, and still it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's like the lesson that she draws from this, you know what I mean? Because I feel like in each of these lives throughout the book, she learned something about herself, about life, you know, that sort of impacts her for the better. And in this one is just sort of shrinking yourself to watch someone else grow.
Yeah.
But if they can't do the same for you, like, there's
then
no point.
Stop.
So she's obviously very thoroughly disappointed.
Yeah.
And heads on back.
Starts to feel the tingle and goes away.
Tingle. That would be a trip.
Yeah.
To just hop in and out of lives
For
you don't know anything about. So you're just kind of like making it up as you go. But,
wild to think about.
Yes. She gets back to the library. And she worries about the version that she left behind. She actually asks Mrs. Elm about it. Like, what happens to that Nora when I leave? And Mrs. Elm was like, have you ever forgotten what you went into a room for? Have you ever just forgot what you were doing? And I was like, dude.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about these podcasts before we record them. And there was a moment where I like had forgotten what I walked in the kitchen to, and I remembered that. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't think anybody invaded my body, but who knows?
Who knows?
But that's messed up. Because how often does that happen to you in a day?
Yeah.
Just one day.
All the time.
All the time.
Literally all the time.
Yes.
And every time I'm all like, silly ADHD, but what if it's actually just someone stealing my body?
Someone who's experimenting with your life for a second.
Yeah.
They're like, nah, I'm good.
And they're like, I'm very disappointed. Man, me too.
Oh,
I'm
Sarah.
just kidding. I'm kidding.
I
Mostly.
I mean, some days, you know, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a weird explanation,
Crazy
Mrs.
to
Elm.
think about. Yeah.
I'm like, I feel it's got to be more than that. And she says briefly, like, she'll have some recollection of the conversation that just happened and everything that, like, transpired. And then just sort of be hazy, which is bizarre. And Nora keeps going on about, like, she doesn't know what she wants.
Yeah.
How there might never be a life that she does want. And Mrs. Elm says something along the lines of, like, maybe it's a lack problem more than a want problem. Like, you just haven't had enough of the things that fulfill you in life more than the want to unalive yourself. Like, it may just be a lack problem. You need a supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Mrs. Nora starts pushing her to, like, choose another life.
And she chooses one where she's a good cat mom.
Yeah. She says something about, like, she wants a life where she kept him indoors, the cat, and where she didn't try to unalive herself and was a good cat owner. Is how she said it.
She didn't let him outside.
Yeah.
And then she goes into that life only to find that Volts was already dead anyways.
Yeah. Poor kitty.
I know.
Had a
cardiomyopathy?
Cardiomyopathy.
Or something.
And he was going to die no matter what. And then Mrs. Elm is like, oh, well, I guess she obviously is very disappointed and goes back to the library immediately.
Yes, obviously. Grieves the cat all over again,
yeah,
basically. I know.
And then Mrs. Elm is like, you know, your cat being found on the side of the road and being hit by a car are two different things. And Nora's like, oh, yeah. Now that I think about it, there was no, like, gore.
No external damage.
Yeah.
He was just
gone.
On the side of the road, gone. And Mrs. Nora's like, so you weren't a bad cat mom. Like, he loved you as much as you loved him.
And she says the year that he was with you was the best year of his life.
Oh, Voltsy.
Makes me think of Molly.
Yeah, oh.
I know.
She was sweet. In that, though, Nora sees that regret disappears from the book. Yeah. So she's, like, starting to learn things that sort of correct her regrets.
Yeah.
And make them less of a regret. Especially, like, I mean, if you form a regret based on something you don't actually know anything.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know the true root of, then at least you can get rid of them, I suppose.
Yeah. Make that book a little lighter.
Yeah. And then the next life she picks, she decides to see what it's like if she would have gone with Izzy, who went to Australia before the wedding would have happened. And so Nora didn't go with her because she was going to get married.
Yeah. And Izzy's kind of salty about that, which I think is why they fell off a little bit.
Yeah, she wanted Nora to go with her.
Yeah.
So she's like, let's try that out for size.
This one made me laugh because she gets into the world and she's in a swimming pool and almost drowns to death.
Jumps in and is underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be alarming.
Yeah.
And, I mean, she has a history of swimming, which we didn't mention. Like, she was a really, really good swimmer and ended up quitting because she was seen in the pressure. Yeah. But she's swimming. Yeah, that would be alarming.
Can you imagine? Just being, like, dropped into a swimming pool and she's in the deep end.
I was going to say, I'm not a super strong swimmer.
Me neither.
and if I was, like, unprepared, I feel like that could go very wrong.
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, Mrs. Elm did say it's all lives, you know. You're jumping into lives, so don't, immediately end one. And
if she dies in a life, she's stuck there.
Yeah. It's over. I mean,
it's over. She can't come back.
Yeah, Root Life's gone. She's gone.
Yep.
Gone. For real. And when she gets there, she's sort of confused, you know. She is just in a pool. No Izzy in sight. There's just some, like, randos around her. Who are like, hey.
Has no idea where she is.
Yeah, and the people seem to know her as if she's a regular at the pool. They're like, what up, Nora? And she finds that she has, like, a locker key, finds her clothes.
And her cell
phone. Always is Googling herself in these new lives. And in this one, it seems like she posts poems.
Yeah.
That are very, like, emotional.
Yeah.
Emotionally charged.
Yeah, for sure.
One of them called Fire. And she looks through some emails, sees that she had emailed an aunt or something, and had given her address to that person. So she's able to find her apartment and go check out her digs in this Australian life.
Yeah. And she walks in and there's a little short-haired, blue-haired person sitting in her living room, like, playing video games, smoking pot.
Yeah, it's definitely not Izzy.
Yeah, no.
And she's like, well, what the heck? I was supposed to be here with Izzy.
Where is my Izzy?
Izzy's not here. What am I doing with this random lady? It feels very much like college dorms when I'm a 35-year-old woman.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? And they have some interaction.
This roommate made me laugh so hard because she's like total conspiracy theorist.
Yeah,
like talking
yeah.
about cats and you can't touch cats because you'll get sick and die. And
Yeah, some sort of bacteria or whatever.
Toxoplasmosis.
It sounds very intense.
It does.
I have 2 cats. I'm still living, I think. So, but she is very much like trying to warn Nora about that. And Nora's like, I mean, okay, I've had cats, but we don't need to talk about that.
Let's see.
And she
asks her about Izzy.
She does. She asks, like,
where's Izzy?
Where's Izzy? And the girl seems very confused.
Uh-huh.
Like, Nora has lost her mind. And says something like, oh, what, the girl who died?
Yeah.
And, of course, Nora is in a tailspin.
I think she said the car crash girl or something like that.
Yeah.
Not the girl that died, but... So then Nora, like, starts Googling her and finds eventually that...
Finds the whole story.
Izzy's dead.
She was in a car accident. And it sort of made me think back to the poem that they talked about or like showed in this chapter that was called Fire. And it very much felt like the grief from Izzy, she was trying to use it to like get herself somewhere better.
Yeah.
But in all of this chapter, it seems like she is putting on a facade of happiness, a facade of like being okay when very much she's not.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Like, you're not allowed to go anywhere. That would be a terrible turn of events.
It would be a terrible.
Terrible. And so, naturally, she's very much disappointed. Big disappointment.
Goes back to the library to
Headed
visit
on
good old
back.
Miss Elm.
Yep.
Mrs.
Elm.
Mrs. Elm.
Yep. She's like, what the heck? You could have warned me.
Yeah, she gets back and she's kind of pissed.
Yeah.
She's like, what the heck, Mrs. Elm?
Yep. And
she asks also, sorry to interrupt you. She asks Mrs. Elm why she stayed in Australia after Izzy died, because that's the only reason she went, was to be with Izzy.
Yeah. Which is a great question.
Yeah. And Mrs. Elm tells her that, she was grieving and she kind of got stuck in her grief. Like, She was just depressed and
down a hole, numbed. And Nora feels that there's not going to be any life where she won't be stuck.
Yeah.
That she's just sort of floating through, not changing, stuck in sort of a pattern in any of them. That's what she assumes.
And they have a little conversation about fish and how fish get depressed.
Yeah, what's that about?
And it just, I was like, are these real facts? Because I want to make sure that my fish is not depressed.
Yeah. I want to know.
I have to know.
What is the science behind this? Are you a scientist? We should explain what it is, I suppose. They essentially said if a fish is depressed and you draw a line on the fish tank, it won't go above that line.
Yeah.
But if it's not, then it will go above the line.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this day in my life.
I haven't either, and I want to test it. We have a betta fish at work, and, this is totally a side tangent, I'm sorry, but bettas can't, have other fish in their tank because they're aggressive and they'll fight.
Yeah, males.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what ours is. And I'm like, that's gotta be lonely, though.
For sure. But also,
now I want to know if my fish is depressed.
You got to draw a line on the tank and report back.
I will.
Stat.
I'll let you guys know.
Yeah. Update. My workfish.
If you want to know about my workfish, follow us on TikTok.
We'll make a whole video just for you. You'll have to record it. And you're like, nothing's happening. I don't actually know what I'm looking for. Like, what if he just likes to be at the bottom of the tank?
Right.
That is weird. Is there science behind that, guys? Who's a scientist? Does anyone study fish behavior and depression?
Please let us know in the comments.
On
YouTube.
On YouTube or any other not podcast platform. Anyways, it's not the point. But Nora talks about how she had stopped swimming because she was too much in the spotlight and didn't want to be seen. So she felt stuck there. She felt like the dad was very much under the mentality that the entire world was out to get him. Mm-hmm. including Nora, because she stopped swimming. Mm-hmm. And that's why he was so hard on her.
Another person blaming Nora for their shortcomings.
Yeah.
I can't be successful unless Nora does this.
Right. It's all up to Nora for everyone else's success.
Yeah.
Robbie and Joe.
Talk about pressure.
Dan. Yeah. Why is it on her, guys?
Come on.
Get your own freaking lives. But then she decides that she wants a, like, successful life. Mm-hmm. And that she wants to see what would have happened had she pursued swimming.
Yeah. If she hadn't quit.
Yeah. And she wakes up in a really fancy hotel room.
Yeah.
And Googles herself immediately.
Yeah.
As one would. And finds that she's like a multi-medal Olympian, a philanthropist. She's like a speaker, motivational speaker. She's doing all this stuff. She has a whole TED Talk about, like, be true to yourself. Be you, shamelessly. Yeah. And I'm like, that is very ironic, considering you're not you.
Yeah.
But you are, but you're not.
Yeah.
Who is you,
Who
Nora?
are you?
She's trying to find that out, I guess, Danielle. And she learns that she's got to do a speech.
She's got to do a speech. She's also really strong in this life.
Yeah. She's like,
she says she can do a one-handed plank. She can do 10 full push-ups. I'm like, 10? Wow.
Yeah, I can't do one.
I can't either.
But she starts working out. She's like, cool.
Yeah, she's like, heck yeah, look at me.
I mean, if your body, that's nuts too, man. Not only are you jumping into a whole new life, but like your whole entire body is different in every life.
Yeah, that's wild.
That would be wild.
But anyways, she also searches for Izzy on Facebook when she's, investigating her life.
Yeah.
And finds that, Izzy's still alive, but they aren't friends at all.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad, but at least she's alive, I guess.
They're not even, like, social media friended. No. Yeah.
So they're not even acquaintances,
They're not
really.
talking.
Yeah.
So at least she's alive.
Yeah.
But they don't get to know each other anymore.
Yeah.
And then she gets a call from Nadia. Mm-hmm. And she's like, who the heck are you?
Who is this Nadia lady?
This. And Nadia's like, you want to talk to your dad?
Yeah.
Which, her dad is dead in her real life.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Say, what? Yeah, let's talk to him.
Yeah.
Except I'm scared. Which, fair. That's a trip, too.
Yeah, I mean, she finds out some kind of gross shit.
It's not great.
Yeah.
But he's alive.
Nadia is stepmommy.
Stepmommy, who her father had an affair with.
Yeah.
Cheated on her mom.
Yeah. And she's like the mom of another Olympian.
Yeah.
Olympic athlete. Mm-hmm. They had an affair.
Yeah. And she thinks about how, because she pursued swimming, is Olympian, etc., like, he got all that he wanted of his dream because Nora lived it, but he's still, like, super curt with her and rude and sort of standoffy.
Yeah.
And still acts as if she could do more and do better.
Yeah.
As does everyone. That's the story of Nora's life.
It's really sad.
Yeah, she finds out that in this life, her mom died a lot earlier than she did in her root life. Because
of the affair, she started like drinking and
turned to the
falling
bottle.
down a hole.
And she died alone.
Yeah.
Neither Nora or her brother were there.
Because she wouldn't let them be.
Yeah.
Because she was afraid they were going to make her quit drinking. Which is so sad.
It's very sad.
So sad.
But she does seem to have a relationship with her brother.
Yeah.
Who is her manager.
Yeah. For 7 years.
Yeah. Manager for 7 years, married to Iwan.
Yeah, this is the first time we learned that Joe is gay. Mm-hmm. Which
his husband is Dr. Iwan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're cute. Yeah. I like them.
They seem to be. He is a recovered alcoholic, like his mom. Well, his mom was now.
She
never recovered.
Yikes.
But he did, so that's good. He went to university in this life.
Mm-hmm.
I think Joe talks a little bit about Ravi, how he ran into him or something. And Ravi still seems to be resenting Nora, even in this life.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to get over it. And Joe says he doesn't ever really think about that having panned out.
Yeah, no, because he's perfectly successful because of Nora.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's fine.
Yeah. And then, she has to go make her speech. and she is not prepared. She's not a freaking motivational speaker.
Before she makes her speech, though, she, digs through her own purse and realizes that she's on antidepressants in this life, and she's kind of disappointed in that.
Yeah, she's like, well, dang, this should be a happy life. I shouldn't need them, right?
Yeah.
But even as a multi-medal winning Olympian philanthropist, etc.,
she is still depressed.
She's still got mental health issues, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
And she's not at all prepared to give a speech in front of 1,000 people about a career in life that she has no idea about.
Yeah, she has nothing to go on here.
Yeah.
Except for what she Googled.
Yeah, and she's like shy and not a person who would public speak.
Yeah, can you imagine?
I cannot.
Can you imagine me hopping into life like that? I would be a puddle.
I feel like you would have gotten out of that life a long time ago.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't have let it play out this far. I guess you have to hit a certain amount of disappointment, and yours would have been when you found out you had to give a speech.
Yeah, I would take one look at that itinerary and be like, bye.
I'm good. Thanks.
I am out of here.
Other Sarah's got this, though. And as, like, the person who's speaking before her is wrapping up, Nora tells her brother, like, I can't do this. And he says, don't let us down.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not about Nora. It's about everybody who wants her to be what she is.
Yeah.
Again.
There's also story. There's a woman next to her in the audience who brings up Portugal, and I know it was brought up once before this by someone. Like something that happened to Nora in Portugal. I don't know that we ever learn what happened.
She does see scars on her arms.
That's right.
That she wonders if they're self-inflicted.
Yeah.
So that could have been what happened in Portugal.
Yeah.
But she never gets an answer directly.
Yeah, because she's whisked up on stage as soon as the woman says something.
I know. She is whisked up, and the speech that she gives is wild. I have a page marked for a quote if you're down to hear about it.
Absolutely. I also do, and I wonder if it's the same one. What page you going to, friend?
111.
Me too.
Oh, snap.
I'm going to let you handle that.
Snippity snap whap. Not sure what that means.
Oh, this is the tree thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's multiple things.
There are a lot.
It's a lot. I won't read all of it. But she starts by saying, life is strange. How we live it all at once in a straight line. But really, that's not the whole picture, because life isn't simply made of things we do, but things we don't do too. And every moment of our lives is a kind of turning.
Mm-hmm.
She goes on to say that life is like a tree. The tree that is our life develops branches, and think of all those branches departing from the trunk at different heights, and think of all those branches branching off again, heading in opposite directions. Think of those branches becoming other branches, and those becoming twigs. And she's essentially saying, the infinite possibilities that our life are this tree that's ever growing,
mm-hmm.
and
constantly changing.
Yes, yeah, which is the root of this whole concept.
Yeah,
about
the root.
It's like I did it intentionally. I did, for sure. No. But it's a very deep philosophical speech, and I'm sure it's very unlike that life, Nora.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Nora's not going up there and being like, let's think about existence.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, you can do anything you aspire to.
Yeah, she's supposed to be, like, motivating.
Yeah, not like, so let's...
That definitely shows in, like, the faces in the audience. Like, she says that everyone is just kind of deadpan and staring at her like, what is going on?
Yes.
But then she spots Robbie in the audience, and he's the only one smiling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I'm like, why is he there if he's still salty about things?
I think Joe mentioned that he would come at some point. But yeah, he's there and seemingly like digs the speech, which is interesting. Maybe he needed that. Maybe he needed that messaging to be like, dude, you could do whatever you want.
Heck yeah.
Instead of sit and resent.
Yeah. Go make something for yourself instead of expecting someone else to do it.
Yeah, buddy.
Come on.
She does go on to say too, like, it can drive you insane thinking of all the other lives we don't live.
Yeah.
Which it very well could.
Very true.
If I got down that path, I'd probably go insane. Because it's insane.
Yeah.
It is inherently. And ends with, success isn't something you measure in life, isn't a race you can win.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was a good speech.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, me too.
I was into it.
It was very deep.
It was.
And everyone else was like, what actually just happened?
This is not what we came here for.
Not it. And she just doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, no, she ends the speech by telling Joe that she loves him, and then she goes on back to the library.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Heads on back. Back at it again with Mrs. Elm.
Mrs. Elm.
And there seems to be a system error.
There is a problem.
There's something afoot. The library is shaking and shuddering. The lights are flashing. And it's a problem, obviously.
Mrs. Elm tells Nora that the transfer back to the library looked fragile. Like something is wrong.
Yeah. And this whole concept of, because she essentially suggests that like her root life, her body could soon be lost.
Yeah.
Like it could be over soon.
Yeah.
And that idea troubles Nora enough that because she starts thinking about death in a negative way, the library rights itself.
Yeah.
Like all is well again.
Yeah.
It seems like its longevity and the way that it functions is based off of her
mindset.
Yeah.
Like she's got to stay positive to keep this process going.
Right. She doesn't, yeah. If she's seeking the end, then it will come for her. And she says to Mrs. Elm, that she just kind of wants happiness. She was never really expected to do anything by any of her family. She says, like, except for swimming. Outside of swimming, she wasn't expected to pursue anything, whereas her brother was. Her mom didn't even want her to kind of do anything because she didn't want to lose her.
Yeah.
She wanted to keep her there.
Yeah.
So she's never really got to explore what would make her happy.
Yeah, and that's sad. I can't imagine, like, I don't know, my family being supportive of, like, my brother's dreams, but not being supportive of mine.
But completely disregarding anything outside of this one tiny box that they've put you in.
Yeah.
Like, that's really terrible parenting.
Sad, yeah.
You could be whatever you want to be, Nora, which is what she thinks of. And it brings her back to the conversation from the prologue with Mrs. Elm.
Yeah.
About being a freaking
glaciologist.
Thanks for saying
you
it.
You are welcome.
I appreciate you.
I got you. I know what you need.
You sure do, and it's not that freaking word because it sounds made up. The English does not English in my brain. But anyhow, she is sent off to become a iceberg studier.
A glaciologist.
A glacier studier. Anyway, and wakes up on this little boat in kind of like a dingy room.
Svalbard.
Yeah, yep.
That's the name of the place.
Great. Foulbard?
Svalbard. I don't know how to say it. S-V-A-L.
We're cultured.
Svalbard.
Yeah. There, on a boat, there's vodka and cigarettes
and a lady.
And a lady named Ingrid.
I love Ingrid.
Me too. I like Ingrid. She starts talking to Nora and asks her, like, what brought you here so far away from civilization?
Yeah.
And what are you escaping from? And Nora just, like, kind of brushes it off.
Yeah.
And asks her instead. She's like, no, you, Ingrid, you tell me, sucker. And Ingrid's like, well, I lost my husband and, couldn't escape his ghost.
Yeah. She wanted to be somewhere that he had never been and where his ghost couldn't haunt her. So she left.
She left, but she says, it doesn't actually work all that well. It only half worked because places are places, memories are memories, and life is fucking life. Mm-hmm. I'm like, true facts, Ingrid. It all is what it is. You can't really change the state of the state.
Yeah, unless you're in Nora's position.
I guess. Unless you end up in a freaking in-between. And then she meets Hugo.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something else?
I was going to talk about the gun in the cabin.
Oh, yeah.
The bang, bang, shoot, shoot.
The bang, bang, shoot, shoot. She's got one of those. And
she does.
Happy
Nora,
about it?
sees a shotgun in the little cabin that they're in, and she's like, happy because it makes her feel like she's on an adventure. I'm like, that's weird.
Are those two correlated?
Why? You can be on an adventure without
a firearm, without pew-pews. You don't need to be going bang bang anywhere. Well. Yeah, that is a strange comment, Nora.
Yeah.
Okay. She's like, it is an adventure because there's a pew pew. And then the next morning at breakfast, she meets Hugo Lefebvre.
Yeah.
Sounds French.
Yep. He comes and sits with her.
He sits with her, and he seems kind of shifty, you
He
know?
does,
He seems like he's hiding something. He's a little antsy. He's got eyes about him, you know?
He does, indeed.
Those eyes that you're like, what are you up to, Hugo?
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, nice to meet you. And she's like, I mean, yeah.
Nice to meet you too, buddy. And then she asks him how long they've been on the boat.
Uh-huh.
Because they're on a boat.
Yep. On a boat.
And he tells they've been there for 3 days.
3 days on a boat.
They're going somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And he informs her that she is to be the spotter.
The spotter.
And she's like, what is that?
She's like, cool.
And she's like, yeah, totally.
I'll do that. I want to be so good at that.
I'm going to rock the spotter.
And we learn
pretty
quickly what spotting is.
Yeah. It turns out that it means you're going to be watching for polar bears.
Yeah. We learn that we're going to Bear Island, which sounds ominous.
Why go there? Well, study,
Research.
I guess. Science.
They're
it's
researching.
Important, I
Come
suppose. No, it is, really.
Yeah.
But she's supposed to look out for polar bears on Bear Island, so it
Yeah.
sounds like a hell of a job.
Yeah.
And she's armed with a flare that's meant to alert everybody else.
Yeah.
Has a gun. And
I would assume the flare would kind of like spook a polar bear too.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess probably not. If I
They're
was a polar
big
bear,
and
I
angry.
don't know that I would be spooked by a little bit of red light.
Yeah, and I feel like polar bears have to work really hard for food.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they're endangered, so they're extra sparse in the way of eats.
Yeah.
So they'd probably just be like, yeah, that's nothing.
Very true.
Look at me, I'm a big bear.
Rawr.
Don't step to me. But she also is armed with some pots and pans.
Yeah.
That
And
she's
a
meant to
spatula?
bang together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't there a
I
spatula?
think so. To bang on
Bang,
it.
bang, bang.
Couldn't you just bang the pans together?
I guess.
I
I think
guess.
she only has one pan.
Oh. Never
Why not
mind.
get two?
Forget it.
Come on.
And
Anyways, she's standing around,
walking in circles,
waiting,
keeping
thinking.
watch. She's thinking about like solitude, and being alone in that moment makes Nora think about. She says she thinks about how humans often forget that they're only one of a million species when she's that like alone in nature, and I'm like, that is very true.
Yeah.
One, we don't give two shits about this planet Earth that we're on.
Yeah.
Humans. Two, like, since we are so evolved and rule so much of the world, the rest of the species are ancillary. But when you're in their territory, you're nothing but a meat bag.
You are a sack of meat.
A sack of meat that's kind of frozen in this circumstance. And then she has a memory of Ash, who was talking about Dunbar and said that humans can only know 150, like their brains only have the capacity to know 150 people. And as we are so connected in social media and stuff, like we feel more disconnected inherently because it's above our capacity.
Yeah.
Is that true?
There's too many people in there.
Is that true?
I feel like it probably is.
I feel like I know more than that. Maybe
Same.
I don't.
I don't
or
know.
I do.
Though.
I wonder if it's like close relationships.
That's what I was going to say. But is it like deeper relationships? Like, yes, I can picture probably 150 people or more.
Are they from this
But
life or other ones?
do I know them?
Yeah.
Not
on like a deep level.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it's just acquaintances aren't counted. Or
Maybe.
like people you see every so often. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, but it made me think a little bit because I have a job where I, talk to like at least 20 people a day and like get to know them in some capacity. And I feel like I like remember things about these people.
So is that one of your 150?
It might be. But I feel like there's more than that. Like, I know a lot of people.
We should tally up the people we know.
We should.
And see if it fits in that
I
range.
guess.
So, anyhow. Then, all of a sudden,
A walrus.
a walrus.
comes out, and she thinks it's a bear. She gets scared as heck.
Yeah, but I'd be afraid of a walrus, too.
I would, too, 100%.
They're huge.
Yeah.
And they have tusks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they
do. Teeth coming out of their face.
Tusks
Because they come out of the face, right?
They do, right?
Or do they come out of their mouth?
Are they big teeth?
Are they just
What are they
giant
made of if
canine
not
teeth?
teeth?
They've got to be the same thing as teeth.
Right?
But I feel like they come out of the...
They're above?
Not here.
Horns.
But like
That's what
here?
you're thinking of. Little pincers.
Yeah.
But they
Now-
look like teeth.
Now I have to Google if
Yeah, we
tusks
need to know.
come out of their
Or
face
somebody-
or out of their mouth.
Somebody can educate us.
Please let us know.
Nonetheless.
Are you a
wal-
tusk expert?
A tusk expert. Not even like a walrus expert.
No.
Well, I guess other animals have
Strictly
tusks.
a tusk expert.
That's
That is
wild.
really hard to say.
Tusk expert, it is. Yeah, it's the SK and the EX. Nonetheless,
Dumb.
that's a very specific field of study. But if you are a tusk expert, let us know.
Please. We're
Any-
desperate.
Anyway, the walrus settles in, you know? They're both
Yeah.
just kind of ignoring each other.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't see you, you don't see me. We cool? We cool.
You don't bother me, I don't bother you.
And then a polar bear does show up.
Yep.
An
Polar bear
actual bear.
comes out of the fog.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh shit.
That would be
I'm
terrifying.
gonna fire this flare real quick.
Hefty no thanks.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to be face to face with a polar bear.
Absolutely not.
Who's
I don't
probably
want to be
starving.
face to face with any bear.
No, not really.
But especially not a polar bear.
yeah, none of them.
No.
I'm good. Don't
Anyways.
buy me a bear.
She fires the flare and the bear just keeps coming.
Uh-huh.
He's
He's
like,
like, "You
I don't care about
silly."
your flare, you stupid human.
Silly human. I'm hungry as hell. I haven't eaten in weeks. So he keeps charging for her. Maybe not charging, but walking with purpose.
Yeah. She starts, at this point, yelling for Mrs. Elm to bring her back. She's like, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Bring me back to the library.
Which, like, her comrades are probably like, what is this girl saying?
Yeah.
But she starts fiddling with, well, she thinks about the gun, but she's like, there's no way I would be able to figure it out in time. So she starts banging wildly on her pot or pan, whatever it is.
And chanting at the same time.
Yeah.
But she's not scared.
Yeah.
I'm not scared. Bang, bang, bang. Clearly terrified.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure the bear can smell it on her.
Uh-huh.
But in that moment, facing a polar bear, she realizes that she does not want to, in fact, die.
Yeah, she wants to live.
Yeah. She wants this life or her life, whatever life she ends up with. And the polar bear goes away with her frantic screaming, etc.
Yeah.
And so then after all of that, she, this life is intense, but it's not bland like her root life.
Yeah.
Where she's sort of been conditioned to expect mediocrity and disappointment. And she goes on this whole family history about how that just sort of runs in her family.
In her DNA, yeah.
How everyone in her life sort of gets the short end of the stick.
Mm-hmm.
And that the only meaning that matters is... What? Being the world witnessing itself. I'm not sure what I said about that. There's a quote. I can find it really quick unless you have one instead.
I do have a quote, but I don't know if it is pertinent right now.
Okay. Well, I can find mine real quick.
On both... This is on page 137.
Hey, same.
On both sides of her family, there had been an unspoken belief that life was meant to fuck you over.
Yeah.
So that just shows, like, her family kind of ingrained into her brain that, like,
Yeah.
nothing is ever going to work out in your favor.
No, you're just constantly going to be hitting difficulty.
Yeah.
And sorrow.
Yeah.
The quote I selected is also 137 to 138, and it says, maybe that's what all lives were, though. Maybe even the most seemingly perfect, intense, or worthwhile lives ultimately felt the same. Acres of disappointment and monotony and hurts and rivalries, but with flashes of wonder and beauty. Maybe that was the only meaning that mattered, to be the world witnessing itself. That's what I wrote down. I wrote it in not making sense, but
That's okay.
which is very interesting way to frame things. But it is, life is hard, man.
Absolutely.
You're constantly facing hurdles, and you kind of have to find the glimmers of joy and hope and etc.
Yeah, and
that
I
bring something more.
I feel like the, high moments wouldn't be what they are if you didn't have moments of low.
That's very true.
You have to have balance to really feel the joy.
Yeah, the high highs and the low lows, they
Yeah.
sort of counterbalance each other.
Yeah.
One without the other. So sorry about that.
Oh my goodness.
Would not be quite right. But anyway, they then go off to Long Year something. Long European.
Long European.
They had to land to like get dinner and stuff. And at some point, Hugo confronts her.
Yeah, I also just want to note that like all of the people on the boat have labeled Nora as the saucepan warrior after saving everyone from a bear.
Yeah, sounds like a hardcore title. You know,
made me
people
chuckle.
would really be intimidated by that.
Well, and like just the originality in that name. They really worked hard to come up with that one.
They stretched for that one. It wasn't given to them at all.
No.
Yep. But then Hugo confronts her and talks about her being a different person.
Yeah, he's like, I know something's off about you.
Yep. And tells her that he is the same way and has been living different lives for a while. Mm-hmm. And they go on to this conversation, which is intense. Can you imagine that one, you're experiencing this wild-ass ride of flipping through lives, experimenting with them, only to find that there's other people doing the same. That would be insane. And also that you just happen to stumble upon each other, not in like root life, but in another possible life. That's a lot. How did they both converge there?
I know.
Why are they both in the same scenario?
I don't know.
Weird.
Crazy.
At one point in their conversation, Nora imagines accepting herself completely and talks about how that must be what freedom feels like.
Yeah.
Which, when you have no constraints holding you back about being your truest self, that has to be freedom. Mm-hmm. But then they meet up again and have this whole conversation.
Yeah. We learned that the library isn't what it is for everybody.
No.
For Hugo, it's a video store.
Yep. And
the person who helps him is obviously not Mrs. Elm, it's his dead uncle.
Right.
Felipe.
And he calls the people that he meets who are flipping through lives sliders,
yeah.
And he says that they all have something in common, which is the deep desire to have done things differently, and they often feel like they'd be better off dead or in a different life. Mm-hmm. And Nora counters with, so they're all both dead and alive in their own mind. And I was like, yeah, that's rough.
It's crazy.
That's rough. You're alive, but your mind may not be fully involved or accepting of the life. And then he brings up the universal wave function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, I don't know if I was just too tired when I was reading this or what, but I literally took 0 notes and I was just like, I don't know what any of this means.
It's very fascinating. I thought it was super interesting. The content of this book was very interesting to me. I feel like I had an easier time reading it than you did. I know we talked about that a little bit.
I really struggled to get into this
one. But the quantum wave theory, he essentially is just talking about, or wave function, that every possibility happens simultaneously in universes that exist over each other. So every possible outcome, all these lives that she's visiting are all happening at the same time, one on top of another. And that's how I guess that's how they are slipping in and out of them, is because they're right next to each other and in the same time, essentially. All time is happening at once, though. I don't know. It makes your brain spin.
Yeah, well, and the thing that doesn't make sense about that to me is that, in Nora's root life, it's still midnight. Mm-hmm. And she's moving through time in all of these lives. How is she not moving through time in her root life, too?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Plot hole, again.
Yeah. How is the time in these other universes not affecting? Well, if it's all happening at once, though, you can just jump to a different time, in quotations, if all time's happening simultaneously. It's not linear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did that help? I don't know if it helped me, but did it help? It's very, very, it's big. It's a huge thought process and like brain game to ponder that.
Well, and I love the idea, like, the more I talk about this book, the more I, like, I don't know, resonate with it, and, like, I'm like, yeah, totally. But I want to go back and, like, reread it now.
Yeah.
And see if I feel differently. I don't know if it was just, like, a book slump I was in or what, but...
Yeah. It's a heavy book. It's, like, dense and chewy, like, the content.
It is, but it's things that I've always thought about.
Yeah, like, same. I mean, you and I have had similar conversations, prior to having read this book.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very interesting. I think it's such a fun game of, like, human nature to question existence and
absolutely,
like why we're here and what could be and etc. And we just don't have the answers necessarily.
Yeah.
But this universal wave function is what is responsible for the experience they're having, is what Hugo gets at. And at one point, Nora asks him, like, who the heck is Mrs. Elm then? Like, is she God? Is she, what is this? And they sort of ponder that and come to the conclusion that it's just like their brain's way of simplifying the situation. Like, how do you go into this in between? Who knows what it actually is?
Right.
But your brain can only perceive so much with the information that it has, and it just sort of simplifies what they're looking at. And so it's created something that's comfortable to them. And,
something that makes sense to them.
Right, which, you know, is different for both of them. So obviously it's coming from their mind. Yeah. So Mrs. Elm is a creation of hers. Is her, I guess.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah.
It's all wild.
It is indeed.
All wild.
We also learn that Hugo has lived in nearly 300 lives, which is insane.
Yeah. How do you have time for that? His real life, he had an aneurysm.
Yeah. So is he just like on life support?
He must be. And he just has time to freaking walk on through every possible life.
All of the time until someone pulls the plug.
And apparently this world that he's in now with Nora is the longest he's been anywhere. It's like 5 days he's been there. Yeah. And they had met prior to Nora coming to this life. And so he knew that she was someone else. He, like, saw the signs.
Yeah, he said that at breakfast she, like, introduced herself to him. But the day before they had talked for 2 hours or something like that. Yeah. And so he knew immediately.
Yeah. That something was up.
Yeah.
If not amnesia, then you are a completely different person. Nora expresses to him that she's concerned she's not going to find her ideal life in time. Like, she doesn't know how much time she has. And he says that, you know, they start listing all these possible timelines or lives that they could have interacted with. And he mentions, like, maybe we were married in one and maybe we hated each other in another. And then Nora kisses him. And are you looking for a quote?
I was, but I don't.
Okay. She kisses him, and then they go to his room.
Yeah. He's like, I don't normally share a room. And she's like, maybe you should change that.
Do you want to, big boy? Nope, sorry. Take it back. Rescind.
Ew.
Yeah, that was bad. Nonetheless, okay. They get to his room.
They get to his room and get busy.
They get busy.
And Nora is thoroughly disappointed. So disappointed, in fact, that she goes back to visit Mrs. Elm.
She does. Yeah, she was just talking about how he didn't seem like he was all there. Like, he'd lived so many lives, and that the only person he must be intimate with himself, having done that, is himself. Yeah. So she felt like she wasn't even involved. It was just all about him. And she said, no thanks, and left. So she gets back to the library once more. And Mrs. Elm suggests not wasting any more time. They talk a little bit about Hugo, and she essentially implies that he probably has more time than her, and she's got to get busy finding a life.
Yeah, she, you know, I don't remember if it was at this point. Yeah, there's an infinite number of lives for Nora to choose from, but her time could be limited. Right. We just don't know.
Yeah. From her root life could be limited.
Yeah. And as long as it stays midnight in the library, she has as much time as she needs.
To go meander.
Yep.
And she picks the one where she became a rock star.
She does indeed.
She goes off and...
She wakes up, I don't know. She fades into the life, and she's, like, backstage at a show.
Yeah.
And again, this is immediately where I would become a puddle and go back to the library.
I think she talks about that a little bit, though, too. Like, the anxiety or the fear wouldn't send her back. It has to be, like, utter disappointment.
I would be utterly disappointed.
Would you? I don't know. Like, what? I mean, yeah, I guess. But, I don't know. Nonetheless, she's not. She's afraid.
I'm sure that for her, like, because this was something that in her past was a possibility.
Yeah.
She's curious.
Right.
And so the fear isn't enough to send her back. But for me, I would absolutely not. Nope. No, thank you.
I know. The labyrinths are clearly well known. There's like thousands of people waiting for their encore. So they've already played a show.
Yeah.
She doesn't know any of the freaking songs.
she's
like the lead singer
Yeah.
and songwriter.
Kind of important.
Yeah, kind of a big deal. And she's like, pulls it out of her ass. Like, we should do Bridge Under Troubled Water.
Yeah, the first song that she suggests, the band is like, oh, we just did that. Like 15 minutes ago. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And she's like, okay.
Sorry, forgot.
How about this?
Yeah, something I know. In this brief interaction, Robbie still seems resentful, even though they've made it big. They did the thing. Mm-hmm. He seems to resent maybe her fame, the spotlight being on her.
Yeah.
Joe isn't performing with them, and when she asks Robbie where he is, he says something like, oh, probably schmoozing the press.
Yeah.
And she kind of takes that and goes with it.
She's like, oh, okay. So he's not like a part of the band, but he's still a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they go out perform, and it's like an incredible experience. Nora says like she figures out that she's capable of way more than she thought, because she just had a great performance, and they were gonna try to do another song, their like big one.
Yeah.
That I forgot the name of already.
I did too. But Nora's like,
It's
have a great night, everybody.
Like Wolf? No. Howl.
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 Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, let's get out of here.
Good night, everybody. Also, she says that, like, as she was singing, she felt alive and powerful.
Yeah.
Having 20,000 people, disembodied heads, stare up at her. Thank you.
Yeah, no thanks. But that is powerful.
Absolutely.
To have that big of a following who
Yeah.
are like die hard and,
Yeah.
clearly would do whatever they could to be in your presence.
Aye.
But after the show, she finds out that she's still friends with Izzy.
Mm-hmm. And she wonders why.
Yeah.
Because obviously she didn't go to Australia with Izzy.
Yeah. But she's sending her pictures of whales from Australia or something. Robbie still seems unhappy, like I mentioned. They're internationally famous. They were performing in Brazil. And she has a different fire poem. Yeah. She had the fire poem in the life in Australia that essentially was like trying to take her grief and turn it into something. Whereas this one, it paints a picture of like the power is hers. She is power.
Yeah.
And then
they get on the tour bus. And she learns that she's got to do a podcast.
She gets a call from Ryan Bailey.
Oh, yeah, Ryan.
Who is some sort of famous
celebrity
who
actor,
talks about philosophy.
Or something.
Yeah. And in her root life, she was like in love with him.
Yeah, she had the fantasies about him.
She had the hots for good old Ryan Bailey, only to find
this life.
Yeah.
They're exes.
They dated.
She friggin' dated her celebrity crush.
Yeah, but he seems pretentious.
He does.
Yeah, kind of douchey.
Yeah, I don't think she was missing anything in her root life.
No, the philosophy part that he put on for TV was all about publicity.
Yeah,
like
it was an act.
Nothing was real. And then she meets Joanna, who seems comforting.
The manager of the band.
And she looks at herself on socials again and, sees that she's obviously very famous and looks at one of the posts she put out recently that said something along the lines of, you can have everything and still feel nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, dang, girl. So she's got millions of followers and still is obviously struggling with something in the way of mental health. They get to the hotel.
They do. And there's a bunch of people outside waiting for autographs. Which is intimidating.
That's very intimidating.
Some guy asks her to sign his shoulder.
To make it into a tattoo.
Yeah, to get a tattoo.
That's a lot. I don't want my signature tattooed on someone.
He says something about one of her songs, like saving his life, basically, and how she says something about, like, I can't believe a song that I wrote when I was 19 had that much of an impact on someone's life.
Yeah. I mean, cycling through all these lives, like, her decisions and overcoming regrets have changed the path of everyone that she knows, which is interesting.
It is indeed.
But then the podcast goes down.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk to any of the other band, just her.
Which makes the whole tension between her and Robbie
worse.
Well, it makes it, like, understandable from my point of view. I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd kind of probably be pissed, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, yeah, she's writing the songs, but they are a part of it, too, you know?
Right. But the podcaster starts interviewing her about a number of things, and we discover that in this live, Dan became like a stalker.
Oh, yeah. She's got a restraining order against him.
Yeah, he became a stalker.
Broke into her house.
Yeah. Stole stuff?
Yeah, he broke in and stole lyrics to a song, and then tried to claim that he wrote the song.
Right. It was the same one that the guy was like, it changed my life. Yeah. Beautiful sky.
Yeah.
She realizes that she's involved in both praise and controversy as a part of fame. They go through a list of things. They start talking about the songs that she's written and their meaning. And she asks the podcasters if they wonder about different lives. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm sorry? And she gets into another, like, deep philosophical conversation with strangers, which is unlike her character in that life anyway. She talks about how there's, like, no easy paths you can take, and you essentially can't have happiness without sadness.
Yeah.
Which is very true. We touched on that before.
I just saw in my notes, it was the podcaster that asked about, did you ever wonder, like, where you would be if you had chosen a different path? So she wasn't the one who brought it up, it was him.
Right.
But
yeah, another
beside the point.
Deep philosophical conversation. Yeah. She starts to evaluate her entire life as she sees new paths and possibilities. Yeah. And then they ask or mention her brother Joe.
She says something about missing home sometimes, and the podcast host is like, which one?
Yeah, you're one in LA or...
And she says, you know, the one in wherever they're from. I can't remember. Bedford, yeah. And the host is like, well, doesn't that make you miss your brother? Yeah. Who died 2 years ago?
Overdosed.
From an overdose.
Yeah.
Ouch.
I know. He was a part of the band, and...
Yeah.
Drug, sex, and rock and roll.
Yep.
Got the best of him.
It's sad.
So, of course, she's, you know, not about that. I think she runs down and confronts Robbie.
Yeah, she's like, what the heck?
And he's like, what do you mean? Like, this has been a thing. And she's like, you said Joe. He's like, yeah, Joanna, the manager. Yeah. So she just, I
can't imagine.
Devastating.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And at the end of that chapter, they, like, their lyrics to Howl, their famous song, are written down, and they make it seem like the rock style life feels fake and suffocating to Nora. Like, the lyrics just make it feel like it's not the life she actually wants, and even the Nora leading it is not having it.
Yeah. I feel like at that point she's probably just so, like, deep into it that she can't, you know, get out of it. Yeah. She's famous.
What are you gonna do? Even everyone knows your name and face.
Like, break up the band, people are still gonna be like, hey, you're that person.
I know you. Yeah. Get a whole bunch of plastic surgery. Change your name.
Become a new person.
And if you're known internationally, like, where can you go?
Where can you go?
Yeah.
You gotta go to the deserted islands of that place.
Nora Land. Yeah, so this Nora feels stuck, clearly. So, you know, root life, Nora's like, bye.
Yeah, my brother's dead, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go see Mrs. Elm.
Back to Mrs. Elm.
And she tells Mrs. Elm immediately that she hates this process and she doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. And then the library starts freaking out. The library shutters. And then she remembers the polar bear and it stops. The polar bear meaning she doesn't want to die.
Yes. She remembers.
She's not just like, polar bear, and calms down. There's a quote on page 188 that she says to Mrs. Elm. Mrs. Elm says to her, the thing that looks the most ordinary might end up being the thing that leads you to victory. And I feel like she's hinting at that Nora keeps picking these like really big regrets that she wants to undo. She picks really big pivotal life moments, but they're also not just hers. Like, they're the dreams of everybody she knows, too.
Yeah, the regrets she's chosen so far were other people's dreams.
Yeah. And she's picking these large, grandiose ones instead of looking at the small bits and bobs here and there that might have changed things dramatically.
Yeah.
And she brings up a memory of Nora's about a party that she went to on a river and how she wanted to prove that she could swim in the river and was like, in the moment of that memory, she was stuck in the river and like afraid and felt like she was
couldn't get to the other side.
Yeah, she was like equidistant between both shores.
Yeah.
And she says something like struggling to survive, not sure with which path to commit to, and she realizes that in that memory, in that moment, she did commit to a path and like made it out alive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what she needs to do now. Like that's resonating in her current circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She also, I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
Never mind. I do remember what I was going to say now.
Oh, good.
In this memory, she has a moment where she, like, realizes that Joe tried to help her, and she thought that he never did try to help her.
Yeah.
When she was stuck in the river. And I just thought that was,
Yeah. It painted a different picture of her brother for her.
Yeah.
More than just letting her go at it alone, which seems to be the name of the game.
Absolutely, especially in her family.
Yeah,
Jesus.
all three of them. But then she says she wants a simple, gentle life.
Yeah.
A gentle life where
she chose to work in an animal shelter instead of
shelter.
at the music store.
Yep.
So
and
she goes.
This life.
It's boring.
It's boring.
Boring.
She, gets there, is working with the animals.
She did say it was like really easy to slip into this life because she didn't have to like pretend like she didn't know anything because they moved her to the dog shelter when she was normally in the cat shelter.
Yeah.
So it was normal for her to be asking questions. And everyone was wearing name tags, so she didn't have to like pretend like she knew people.
Right. So it was a relatively easy transition.
Yeah.
And she goes out to have lunch after doing stuff with dogs, and a random dude shows up.
Can we talk about Sally, though? The dog.
Yeah.
That she's taking care of.
Tell me about Sally. I don't remember.
She's a bull mastiff, and she's, like, afraid of everything, and she's got cigarette burns all over her body.
Oh, yeah. That's so terrible.
I wanted to hug Sally.
I know. Yeah, I wanted to go into, like, the animal-related field, like vet tech or something, when I was younger. And then I worked in a freaking animal hospital as, like, a boarding person, and I don't think I could do it.
I couldn't.
It's just heartbreaking seeing the things that come in.
Yeah.
But more power to you, Nora, in this life.
Yeah, so there's a quote I wanted to read, and that's why I wanted to talk about Sally.
Okay.
Nora, in seeing this dog, realized that she hates people. And this quote said, Nora wanted to live in a world where no cruelty existed, but the only worlds she had available to her were worlds with humans in them.
I wrote that down too. Relatable.
Yeah, seriously. Dogs
suck,
over
man.
people.
People
any
suck.
day.
That's why I have I have 3 freaking dogs.
Yeah.
Although they're obnoxious.
I mean, yeah.
But I still love them. They're
But
not as big of jerks as people can be.
Yeah, they're not, like,
and they don't
ruining the world
and
like humans are.
Yeah. And they don't do things maliciously. Like, most of the time, if they're annoying, it's not because they're trying to be.
No, it's because they want you to play with them
and
love
poop
them.
or something.
Yeah.
But fair, Nora. I get it. And she starts talking about how, like, the people that she's around are interacting with her as if she's a good person.
Yeah.
Like, she's compassionate.
Yeah.
And maybe compassion is the basis of life. Like, maybe that's what it's all about. Which I think, in a sense, it can be. And
Absolutely.
is. Like, you gotta be compassionate towards each other. And then Dylan shows up. And she finds out that he's her boyfriend.
And he calls her Norster.
Norster.
Which made me want to vomit.
That's terrible. It feels very much like he is the embodiment of a golden retriever.
Yes. That is the exact energy I got from him.
Yes, he's shy, shaggy, sweet, but a little innocent.
A little derpy.
For sure. And Nora's like, yeah, right. Well, I mean, I guess this is the life.
Yeah. We also learned that they went to school together. He's a couple years younger than her, but he, like, mentions always seeing her in the library playing chess with Mrs. Elm.
Yeah, and how Mrs. Elm's still alive.
Yeah.
In an old folks' home.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? You kidding. But then they end up going to dinner?
Yes.
And they're walking to the restaurant, and she notices that String Theory, the place she worked in her root life, is closed.
It's closed. There's a note on the door.
Yep.
And she's like, well, Neil, maybe it wasn't my face after all.
Rude, Neil. And she passes Ash, which he seems to show up in multiple lives.
He does, yeah.
And in this one...
And she's always thinking about him.
Yeah. She's always bringing Ash back to mind. And she thinks about him having come to buy books. And I don't know, like, she says something to him or smiles at him as they pass or something.
Yeah, I think she, like, smiles and waves at him.
And Dylan's like, the heck?
Hey, weirdo.
Okay. Dylan asks about it, and she says, just someone I knew in another life.
Yeah.
Or something. And I'm like, breaking the fourth wall. And then they have dinner, and he seems very happy with his simple life. And...
He does indeed.
They go back to his house afterwards, and he has just a bunch of dogs.
He has a million.
Too many dogs. And
and he tells her he's thinking about letting another dog sleep in his bed.
Man.
Which, that's all it says is another dog. I'm like, how many are there already sleeping in your bed, dude?
They don't even say how many he has, I don't think. Not a specific number. But then I'm like, man, if that's the biggest decision you have going on to make in your life, Dylan, that's a simple life for sure.
Do I let another dog sleep in my bed or do I not? And he tells Nora, he's like, he cries all night. He just wants his daddy. I'm like, gross.
I mean, I act like that with, like, my dogs, kind of.
I do too, but just something about him gives me the ick.
Yeah, fair. It's too much. Yeah. It's a lot.
Too sweet.
Yeah, it's a little icky.
It's
too innocent.
I need a little...
darkness.
Yeah. A little mystery or something. Also, can you not kick the camera?
Did I?
You did.
Sorry, friends. But I think I just moved my feet and the ground shook. Because I'm not even close.
How you would have moved it.
Maybe I touched the... Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Saw it jiggle.
Sorry, YouTube folks.
My chair just made a million noises. I apologize.
She just talks smack to me.
Well, I was trying to look at what you did. Anywho,
yeah, even Nora's like, I think Dylan deserves the other Nora. Yeah, I'm not vibing with this guy.
She says that he deserves the Nora that fell in love with him.
And that is not me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves someone who loves them for who they are. Mm-hmm. And,
Dylan's sweet guy.
If that's the other Nora, then go for it, baby.
But it's not me. Okay, bye.
Before she leaves, though, they're, like, sitting in the apartment drinking a bottle of wine.
Yes.
And Nora's like, I'm gonna polish off this bottle of wine before I go back to the library.
Might as well. I'm not gonna be hungover.
And while she's doing that she's looking at the label on the bottle.
Yep.
And so when she gets back to the library, she tells Mrs. Nora that she wants the life that closest resembles the life on that bottle of wine.
Yeah, which is an interesting choice. Now she's just, like, making shit up.
Yeah, she's like give me anything.
I want to test every possibility because I don't even know what to pick anymore. And in this one, she's married with a kid. Mm-hmm. They own multiple
vineyard.
Yeah, multiple vineyards.
They're very successful.
Yeah, she talks
Their child is at boarding school, which I thought was an interesting choice.
So you're,
you're rich,
you're
clearly.
that kind of people.
You don't care to, like...
develop your own child.
Yeah.
And she says that it feels like it'd be very easy.
Not digging on anyone who has a child in boarding school. Sorry,
take that back. But, they don't have time for a kid, maybe.
Yeah,
in
they're
this
busy.
scenario. They have a lot of vineyards. They're successful. And she says that it feels like it'd be really easy to fake her way through this life because her husband feels very, like, aloof and doesn't really pay much attention to her.
Yep.
And she's left wanting more, so she leaves.
She does indeed. And she's starting to think that she's a little more like Hugo than she realized, like, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, she's just...
Yeah.
wanting to try everything at this point.
And so she starts to.
So she does.
Do you think that a bunch of different lives would make you want to see what else is out there?
Absolutely.
Like, if you...
Yes and no.
Like, if you just kept living them, you're like, this is cool, but what if there's something better?
There's something better. I feel like I would to an extent, but then, like, I don't know. At the end of the day, I feel like I need stability in my life, personally.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say.
I feel like I would be so afraid of picking the wrong one.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be so afraid that after exploring all these lives that were pretty good, which we had found out earlier that, like, once you leave one of the possibilities, you can't ever go back to it.
Can never go back, yeah.
So all these lives that seem great, but then you're still wondering what's better, so you leave it behind, but then you pick one. Like, I'd be so afraid of picking one that ended up being not what I want and ended up regretting, like, I should have been the glaciologist.
I should have done that.
I should have done XYZ. That's too much power.
Yeah, I feel like my anxiety could not handle that.
My anxiety could never. Yeah. I would be overthinking every life.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, and I would go into a life and be like, okay, this is great. Mm-hmm. This is great. Yeah. And I love this life. And there's nothing to be disappointed in. But what if there's... What if this is the wrong one?
Yeah.
What if I die tomorrow if I pick this life?
Right. Or some tragedy happens. Or
I could pick a different life and live to be 100.
Right. I know. I
can't even think about it. It's stressing me out.
I feel you. I know. And she just starts hopping all over town.
All over
the mini towns.
All of them.
She does.
All of them.
She does.
Except not, because they're endless. But it says that she tries thousands.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about how Hugo's been in 300, and we were like, God dang.
Oh, no. Shoot. Dang. But thousands? That's insane to me. And she talks about how, like, in some she's only there for a minute. In others, like, she lives 5-10 days.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, that's gotta be exhausting.
How are you doing all of this while your, like, root life is there?
Time's all happening at once.
I know. It drives me insane.
I know. But through all of this, she meets up with Hugo again and tells him that she's not having fun anymore. Like, she doesn't want to keep hopping through lives. And she starts to accept that in every possibility there will always be bad experiences, but not only that. Like, there will be good sprinkled in, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
So she goes back to the library again and talks about how she sort of feels lost in her lostness. Uh-huh. She's just getting further down a black hole of lost.
Yeah, and she's, like, losing sense of who she is at all. Like, her name doesn't even sound like her name anymore. It's just a noise.
Right. By becoming so many other versions of herself, she's also becoming no one.
Yeah.
Like,
who is she?
Yeah. I mean, which one is her base life? Do we know anymore? She starts to forget her regrets in her root life and then ultimately decides that she wants to see what life would be like with Ash. Mm-hmm. Which, he was coming up.
Yes.
I knew it. I called it in my notes. I was like, this is going to be the one.
Same. He was brought up far too often.
For it to be casual.
To not be something that she explored later on.
Yeah, she had to. And this is like a pivotal life, I think. This experience is huge for her.
For sure.
She wakes up in bed next to Ash.
Mm-hmm. Well, and she questions at first if it's him because, yes, you can say yes to coffee with someone, but that doesn't mean that you're going to marry them. Like, it could lead you down a completely different path. So he's turned away from her when she wakes up in bed. And she's like, I wonder if that's even him.
Right. Because you can't be sure. I mean, freaking she went to Australia with Izzy, and Izzy wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
But she gets out of bed to do her routine Googling of herself.
Yeah, she leaves the room, and there's a tiny child just waiting outside the door for her.
Yeah, who had a nightmare.
That would have scared the crap out of me. Like, oh my God.
You're not expecting a kid at all.
Yeah.
Suddenly have one. And she had a nightmare and needs her mom. And Nora's like, I'm not a mom.
But I don't know how to deal with this child.
Yeah, but has to, figure it out really quick. And ends up, like, playing a game with the daughter.
Yeah. The daughter is there because she had a nightmare about bears, which made me giggle. The bear thing.
Yeah. Right? Call back to a different life. So to calm her down, Nora brings her into a room and starts playing this game. That's like, let's talk about things that you already know. So,
I'm going to ask you a question and you're going to tell me the answer, even though I already know it.
Totally.
Wink, wink.
I'm not at all fishing for information.
Yeah, no.
She finds out the daughter's name's Molly.
Molly. I love Molly.
I do too.
They live in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
And Ash is daddy.
Ash is daddy. And still a surgeon.
He is.
And Nora's a philosophy professor. Or was.
And is writing a book.
I think she's retiring from professing.
Yes.
No, teaching is the word.
Professing. To write a book.
To write her book. And Joe is alive and married to Awan.
Yeah.
He was married to Awan in the Olympian life.
Yeah. She also asks Molly, she's like, do mommy and daddy like each other?
Mm-hmm.
And they do.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, that's plus.
And then she's like, do we ever yell? Do we yell a lot? And Molly says, only when mom is really tired or something like that.
I feel you, Nora. I feel you, girl. I don't know if I yell, but I'm not the same when I'm tired.
True. I have seen you tired. I would much rather deal with a tired you than a hangry you, though.
Yeah, hangry's bad.
Hangry
it's not a good time.
Not fun for anyone.
No.
Same, though.
Yeah. Don't get it.
I have coworkers who I'll, like, be fine, and then all of a sudden I'm really grumpy, and one coworker specifically will be like, Sarah, go eat. You're being a bitch.
You need people like that. You're being a bitch. This seems like, the perfect life.
Yeah.
Nora, the next day, goes out and explores their house, and it seems to have, like, little pieces of everything that she loved. Like,
all
there's
of the lives.
Instruments, there's philosophy books, all sorts of stuff, glaciologist books. There's a little bit of everything.
There are books about glaciers.
There sure are. It seems to be a happy life, one that's fulfilling. She doesn't find any antidepressants and really starts to think, like, I could be happy here.
Yes. They have a dog.
They have a dog named Play-Doh.
Play-Doh. I love Play-Doh.
Back to the philosophy of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts to sort of get in a groove with Molly and is happy that Molly's there because there's no, like, real turmoil or problem in any part of her life, and Molly challenges her, is what she says. Sorry if you hear someone moving a trash can or something.
It's like, what is that? It sounded like
Murderers.
someone's banging on something.
No, or maybe, I don't know. Who knows? It could be any number of things.
It doesn't matter. As long as no one's breaking into the house.
I don't think so. I think my dogs would tell us.
Maybe.
They're kind of pansies, but as she's, like, settling in, she starts worrying about leaving this life.
Yeah.
Like, she worries that when she goes to bed, she's not going to be there again.
Yeah.
She really starts to settle in, and it definitely feels like this is the place she's going to end up.
It does.
It does.
It does indeed. Yeah, and she, like, I think she starts to kind of fall in love with Ash a little bit, too.
She does. She asks him about, like, if he believes in multiple universes.
Yes.
And he's like,
He's like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, sure.
And then she's like, would you believe me if I told you I've lived them? And he's like, I love you. You always make me feel normal.
Yeah, because she is talking crazy. But it makes him feel normal. And she says, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, Ash was looking at the woman he's in love with, you know. So even if she's spouting weird stuff, she's also philosophy for whoa, I
philosophy
malfunctioned.
Professor.
Right. So she's talking about existence and, crazy stuff all the time. I'm sure this isn't the first time.
Yeah.
And then they go to see Joe.
They do.
And she keeps seeing bits of other lives even there. Like,
Yes.
they have a bottle of wine that has the vineyard, of the life,
yeah.
and it's Eduardo, who was her husband, and some
and
other
a different
lady.
wife.
Yeah. Ryan Bailey's movie's out. He comes back up. And
she has no desire to, like, look into Dan at all in this life.
Fair.
I mean, yeah.
Dan's the worst.
Yeah.
And Joe is taking a break from alcohol, so alcohol seems to be like a running problem for him in all of these lives.
Yeah. He also apologizes to her for being horrible
Yeah.
to her when she left the band.
Mm-hmm. It seems like they've grown past resentment in this life, and that Molly sort of was like a catalyst for change for them.
Yeah, I think Iwan was a little bit too, because he says, you know, something about not necessarily not believing her about the panic attacks, but not believing that it was as bad as it was until he met Iwan. And Iwan also struggles with mental health and has panic attacks.
Which, like, makes me mildly salty. Like, you can't just take your sister at her word.
Yeah, why do you gotta meet someone else
that you're in love with? Like, it's a different relationship for it to speak true. I mean, maybe he didn't see them happen, like, in her day-to-day and stuff. Yeah. But nonetheless, I'm like, it's your sister, bro.
Sorry.
It's your sister. And then at some point, she's out playing with Molly and starts remembering parts of this life that she hadn't lived. It was the other Nora who'd gone through them, but she starts remembering them as if it was her.
Yeah, she, like, gets a phone call from someone and knows who it is, even though she's never met her.
Mm-hmm. And she feels, from that, she starts to realize that she's feeling love for Molly and for Ash in this life, and starts to be afraid of losing it. Because she'd never really had that in her root life. You know, she never really had true, unconditional love with anybody. I mean, her family was only out for her to gain them something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dan, same story. Freaking, you name it. They were all just asking her to provide them with something, ultimately.
Yeah.
But it's... I know.
It's sad.
It's very sad.
And annoying.
And it all built to one terrible climax, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, you really pushed her to her edge.
Yeah.
But it seems like Ash and Molly and the life they've built is very wholesome and supportive and, you know, everything that she's been missing. And then she starts to feel like an imposter, though, because of it. Like, this isn't even my life. She didn't even earn it.
Yeah, she has a C-section scar, and she's like, you know, I didn't earn this daughter that I love because I didn't go through it.
Yeah.
Which is so sad.
I feel so bad for both root life Nora and the Nora that
I know
was taken from her life.
Yeah.
Because
she's just, I think this is when it's mentioned that, like, you know, Nora has this deep feeling that she's going to be taken back to the library at any minute, and she can feel the other Nora there ready to take her place when she leaves. So is she just, like, watching this other version of herself love her daughter and take care of her daughter, and is in the back of the brain like, that's my kid, give me my kid back, you bitch?
I can't even imagine, like, if that were to happen to me.
Yeah.
Like, if a different Danielle came trompsing in, caretaking my daughter.
Yeah.
Like, get your freaking hand. I don't care if you're me.
Get your hands off my baby.
That's my baby. You can't push me out of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be heartbreaking. But then you're also so heartbroken for Nora that this is, like, the first time that she's felt any sort of meaning and love, and, like, but she also recognizes that it's
not hers.
It's not hers.
Yeah. I know.
I'm so sad about that.
I know.
But she decides, you know, that she needs to go visit a friend in Bedford. She wants to go see Mrs. Elm.
Yep.
Which she heard about in another life, that she was still alive. So she's going to see if that remains true.
Yeah. It doesn't.
It does not. Yeah, she goes to the home that Mrs. Elm should be and finds that she passed a few weeks ago.
Yeah. But who is there?
Good old Mr. Bandry. And he, in her root life, refused to ever be put into an old person's home.
Yeah, which is why Nora helped take care of him a little bit.
Yeah, he stayed in his house that he'd had forever.
Yeah.
And So when she this is like the first interaction where she sort of starts to recognize that her not living her root life has affected a bunch of people around her.
Mm-hmm.
So while she felt this existential dread that she was worth nothing and made no impact in the world, this is the first glimpse of like, I did though.
Yeah.
One, Mr. Bandry. Then she sees Leo, the piano student.
She leaves the home and sees Leo getting arrested.
Yeah.
For shoplifting.
Mm-hmm.
And remembers a conversation with his mom before she started the piano lessons about, you know, Leo falling in with the wrong crowd and getting mixed up, and she wanted to do this to distract him, and it worked. So like when he started doing good in the piano lessons, he started doing good in other things in his life too.
Right.
He was a good student. He was playing sports and not shoplifting.
Yeah. Yeah. So it impacted Leo directly too.
Yeah.
She brought him out of that. And, you know, she's starting to realize that impact, and she knows that she's different now and looking at her root life in a different lens. Like, she's seeing that it was more than she could even perceive at the time because she was so just consumed by her sadness and loneliness.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is a good life. I want to stay, but she knows that she's on her way out.
Yeah. And this, I have it written down right here. She starts to feel like she's like weakening, and she can feel the other Nora of this life waiting in the wings to take over where she leaves off.
We need explanations, Matt Haig. Tell me.
I need to talk to you, Matt Haig. Right now, sir.
What happens to them? It reminds
to
me
know.
of good old TOG in some capacity.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because
I'm sorry to spark that.
No, it's fine. This was happening in my brain while you were talking. It's fine. The whole point of the in-between is that you're like so thoroughly disappointed in your root life, and you know, whatever. These people, these Noras whose lives she is taking over aren't disappointed in their lives. They're happy. Or at least to some capacity.
Presumably. Except for maybe the Nora with Dan.
Yeah, I mean, who would be happy with that man, really? So, they're not being sent to the in-between when she comes to take over their life, because they aren't to the point that she was in her root life.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, and she's just coming and shitting on their life.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it's not that bad. Damn, girl.
Jeez, why are you so harsh, Nora?
That is terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And I feel like if she were to choose one, do they just disappear?
What happens
They just
to them?
dissipate? They're gone? They cease to exist?
Do their consciousnesses merge
Combine?
into one?
I mean, if that's the case, well, that's still kind of messed up. I don't know if I want to share a consciousness with somebody.
No.
But are they the same
is
consciousness?
That how I don't know. But, you know, it said that she starts remembering things as she, like, settles more into a life. So is that the consciousnesses merging into one? Even though it's the same but it's not the same, because she can feel her waiting in the wings to take over.
But it's Nora.
I know it is,
but
they're different people.
I understand. They are. And what if, when they merge, they don't recognize the differentiation? They just are.
Right. But
so then nobody's getting the shit end of the stick.
I mean,
like that.
Yes, but Nora... what about while she's waiting in the wings over here in the little brain, she is getting the shit end of the stick. And eventually, yeah, if they merge, it would, like, all disappear. The whole, you know, she would forget about the library and whatever, and all of their memories would become one. But what about in the meantime, before that happens?
She's just sitting idly by wondering if she's gonna be kicked out of her own life.
Am I losing my daughter?
Yeah, I mean, that's crap.
Yeah.
But I wonder... if when they merge, is it actually Root Nora that's lost, or is it that Nora? Because does Root Nora become that Nora? Like, does she, if she's meant to forget the library and that whole experience, does she forget her whole root life also?
Right.
And just become new Nora?
Right.
Guys.
She's got to. Because otherwise, how would you explain that to yourself?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Are dreams just you remembering your root life?
Dude.
Danielle?
imagination.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm gonna have an existential crisis.
Same.
Too. Yeah, I don't know. That's wild.
Yeah.
And I need everyone to tell me what they think.
Please, let us know your thoughts,
Because now I'm
guys.
going to go down a spiral for the rest of the night.
This book did so many things to my brain.
Same, but I love this conversation.
Me too.
Anyhow, y'all.
We gotta finish talking about
We
this
sure
book.
do. We're close to the end. But she fades out.
She does. She's like telling herself, this is the best life. This is the best life.
Yeah.
This is the best life. But it doesn't work.
No, she gets back to Ash and Molly and knows that they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Knows that they're going to be looked after.
Because they have each other.
Right.
And Nora.
Yep. The real Nora. Well, life's real Nora.
Yeah.
And then she gets back to the library and it's on fire.
It is hell.
The roof.
The roof is on fire.
Sorry. It was bad. And she's like, oh, shoot.
What is going on?
What's going on?
Things are trembling.
Yeah, this is not good.
The lights in the ceiling start shooting sparks and light the books on fire.
Yeah, and Mrs. Elm is, she's like, you gotta get out of here if you want to live. Because Nora does want to live. She just knew that life was perfect, but it wasn't hers.
Yeah.
And so Mrs. Elm tells her that she needs to find this one book that won't be burnt. There's only going to be one.
Before this, Nora, begs Mrs. Elm to send her to the closest variation of the life that she was just in.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Elm is like, bitch, I can't.
Yeah.
Everything is on fire.
Do you not see the fire?
That is just not going to work, honey.
Your root self is almost gone.
Yeah.
There's not much we can do here. You got to get back to her. Yourself. Mm-hmm. And so she has to find the specific book that won't burn that's 11 miles down or something in the middle on the bottom shelf. And I'm like, damn, Mrs. Elm, you can't make it easier?
It is the only book that won't catch up. Mrs. Elm, can you just go find it for me?
Yeah, straight. You
Make
had
it
magic
levitate?
to summon books before.
Yeah, come on.
Can you not get this one?
Come on.
So she runs to go get it. And it's an empty book.
Yeah.
Which is just equating her root life to endless possibility or potential.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so she tries writing stuff in it.
Yeah.
She tries to write,
I want to
live. I choose to live.
Choose.
etc.
Yeah.
And then finally says, I am alive.
Yeah. And
It's like affirmations.
Brings her on back. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not related to this podcast. I mean, it is, but
it absolutely is.
But she wakes up.
She wakes up with vomit all over.
She wakes up near death.
Yeah. She is in a state.
Yeah. And she needs to find help. She can't use her phone.
Yeah, isn't she yelling? She's like, help, help.
She runs out.
She can't run. She crawls.
Okay. She makes her way out of the house.
She is dying.
Yeah. Okay. She scrambles in whatever way she can to get out of the house and find help and goes to Mr. Bandry.
Yeah.
And is like, you need to freaking call somebody. I'm about to die.
So he does.
No, if she says that many words. But
she's like, help, please.
Yeah, please help me. So she is saved. And makes it out. Her brother Joe comes to visit her at the hospital. Mm-hmm. And they reconnect. Because remember, in Root Life, they're very disconnected. He didn't even say hi to her when he was in town.
Yeah.
And they have this moment.
They do. He apologizes, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He apologizes. They sort of rekindle. And... sorry.
You're good.
There's a quote that I wrote down that says, life begins on the other side of despair. And I feel like Nora very much feels like, yes, all the things that were bad are still bad, but she has
they're
more
not
hope
going away, but
looking forward.
Yeah. She also finds a text message in her phone from Izzy, who she's like, sorry, I didn't get back to you sooner, or something. Or she is just responding to the message that Nora sent, and it came at 12:13.
Yeah.
So if she'd just waited
15
more minutes.
But Izzy doesn't even know what happened.
No.
She has no idea. But I'm glad that Izzy reached out to her.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can build a friendship again.
Yeah.
she gets to talking to Joe about Owan in this life too.
Oh, yeah.
And Nora's like, you gotta go for
You
him.
gotta.
You got to. And knows his last name. And Joe's like, why?
I don't even know his last
And she's
name.
like, you don't need to understand. You just have to do. Like,
Trust
you just
your
gotta live.
sister.
Yeah, just go for it. And she says that she is not, in fact, black hole, which she described herself as before, but a volcano. And she starts seeing parts of these lives that she walked through. She sees Dylan at some point, Mr. Golden Retriever.
Yeah.
Mrs. Elm. She sees Ingrid on TV or in a magazine or something.
She, like, looks her up, I think,
Yeah.
on Facebook and sees some stuff about her.
And says, you never know how it ends.
Yeah. It's true.
You don't. I have a question.
Okay.
Do you think that any of that happened?
I don't know.
Or do you think it's just like DMT? I mean, when you die, your brain releases DMT.
Yeah. I don't know, friend. I don't know.
I don't either. I'm like, could she have actually chosen a life? I don't think she could have stayed in any of them.
I don't think she could have because, well, I don't think she could have because she wanted to stay in that life.
Yeah.
Even feeling like she didn't earn it, she still wanted to be there.
Right. She wasn't disappointed in it at all.
No.
And that was like the thing that Mrs. Elm said would bring her back.
Yeah.
So is this not just her mind, like,
Playing tricks on her.
trying to give her a reason
her
to
to
live?
realize,
Yeah.
like, there's more to life than
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't think she could have ever picked one. And
No.
it was just
I
sort
don't
of like an ego death. It was a death of everything she once knew about herself.
Yeah.
And learned a bunch of stuff in reflecting on that life.
Yeah. So that she could grow.
And be
move
reborn,
forward.
in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
This
book was a ride.
It was a trip.
Yeah.
But it was very good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to reread it. I
You
do.
should.
I
And report back.
Yeah.
I'd like a 10-page paper on your thoughts.
College ruled, please.
APA. MLA? Who knows? I enjoyed it. What would you rate it?
I
I can tell you mine.
Yeah.
I think I give it a 4.
Okay.
Maybe 4.5 even.
Okay.
I think that the content itself really speaks to me personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I enjoyed about it so much. And it really takes you on a journey. It sort of keeps you guessing about what actually is going on.
Yeah.
Like, literally at the end, I'm like, was that just like a fucking fever dream DMT trip? Like,
Yeah.
in her death? Or was there some reality behind it for her? Like, the quantum wave, whatever.
Yeah.
I know that that's actually a scientific theory.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Is that not something we could prove in some capacity?
Right.
I don't know. I had a lot of questions. I enjoyed the read. It was the writing, I don't know, would be my favorite if it weren't this content.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah.
And it made me think a lot. It gave me perspective too, like good reminders about life of like, you know, there's going to be happiness alongside the bad.
Absolutely.
And like
yeah.
you just have to be the truest version of yourself. Like all of these things that were impactful. And I think it held a lot of weight. So I'd say probably 4 or 4.5. Okay. I enjoyed it.
I think overall, right now, I would probably give it like a 3.5.
Okay.
Like I said, I want to reread it. The more that I have talked about it, the more I like it. And
Yeah.
I almost want to bump it up to 3.5, 4. But
Ooh.
I'm going to keep it where it's at for now. There was some plot holes for me.
Fair. That weren't
Um,
explained. But then I'm like, if it wasn't real, then that doesn't matter.
it's true, but it does to me.
I mean, it's fair. If it's true, if it happened and it was a
Yeah,
possibility,
and we don't know.
there's no,
We don't know.
merging. Anyway, we already went through that.
We don't know if it really happened or not.
Right.
So, yeah, I liked it overall. Like 3.5 is still a good rating for me. I
Yeah,
would
for
still
sure.
recommend it to people.
Yeah.
I want to reread it and see if I feel differently. I also was in a little bit of a book slump reading this, so that could very well affect my rating too.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I love the conversations it brought up.
Yeah, this was fun.
It was really a fun one to talk about.
It very much was. Yeah, I think we got down some good paths.
Yeah.
And now I want to talk to everyone about it. So y'all should send us your thoughts.
Yeah, please.
You can watch this episode unfold on YouTube, Books and Crannies Podcast. You can follow us on TikTok, same handle, Instagram, same handle.
Yeah.
And listen on any podcast platform if you aren't there already.
Yeah.
Next week.
We are finishing off Akamath.
We're finishing off Akamath.
I am so excited for next episode.
I love this book.
So excited. And this last section.
I know. Chef's kiss. It's so good, y'all. So February, math real quick, 12th?
12th.
The day before my birthday.
Yeah.
Hey.
We will be talking about Akamath.
Chapters 47 through 69.
Yes.
The end of the book.
69.
Nice. So please tune in.
Please.
If we left you on a cliffhanger and you're pissed, we're coming back.
We're coming back. We're coming back with a bang, y'all.
We sure are. And we would really, really appreciate if you if you subscribed or followed on whatever platform you are interacting with.
Leave us a rating.
A rating on a podcast platform means a lot.
Absolutely.
Commenting on our content is awesome. And share it with your friends. Tell your friends about it.
Please.
If you're an avid bookie and you don't necessarily like these books, but your friends might, share it with them.
Yeah.
And come back when we talk about books you do like.
And if you don't like these books, go visit us on any of the commentable content, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and let us know what you might want us to talk about. Mm-hmm. Please.
Yeah, please do. We are very excited about future episodes.
Yeah.
And we're
very open to suggestions.
Endless possibilities.
Endless possibilities.
That's right. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Happy reading.
We will see you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.